Meeting is being recorded. The listing of matters are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought for discussion to the extent permitted by law. Can we please have a call to order?
Nicole Mello, present.
Mark Pacheco, present.
Peter Karen, present. And we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask you to stand. And can you just stay standing for a moment after that, please? We do have some people that we lost this week, some friends and neighbors, as well as it is 9/11 today, and we want to just acknowledge that, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We did, obviously it is 9/11, and there was a ceremony this morning at the fire station, which unfortunately I wasn't informed about, or we were not informed about in a heck of a lot of time, so I did not attend. But it's Dayton's way of honoring what happened on 9/11. And there were ceremonies throughout the country, and it's just, I wanted to acknowledge that it happened, and if we can just, along with the names that I'm going to read, give a moment of silence, please. We lost four residents: Priscilla Duat, Lucille King, Carl Stormstrom, and Marjorie Hugo. Carl was a long-time resident, and he did a lot for the town. A lot that he did was behind the scenes, never public. He would mow grass and do events like that, and it's sad that we lost him. The town, as well as the other residents, is a void to fill. Thank you. We're going to get right into announcements. We don't have a busy agenda. It was kept very light. The biggest thing is going to be the interviews, which will happen in a little while. But in the meantime, can we do the announcements, please?
The annual MDA Fill the Boot event will take place on September 14th and 15th at the intersection of Route 138 and Center Street, weather permitting. The event hours will run from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Rain dates will be September 21st and the 22nd. A public forum will be held on September 16th, 2024 to discuss the budgetary impact of the Bristol Plymouth Regional Technical School building project. This meeting will be held at the Dayton-Rehoboth Regional High School Auditorium, 2700 Regional Road at 7 p.m. Dayton Council on Aging ribbon cutting for the new renovated entrance patio will be held on Thursday, September 19th, 2024 at 10:30 a.m. And the Town of Dayton Food Bank will be held next on September 21st, located at Town Hall in the lower level.
Thank you. We have a section here for public input. Is there any, Mr. Hall?
Just some news from school committee meeting last night. One of the major contributors, Alan Feinstein, founder of the Feinstein Foundation, passed away this week. Although he has passed, and we're saddened for that, his loss. His wife has promised to continue.
Great.
That foundation has given thousands of dollars to both the Dayton schools and the Rehoboth schools as well. Lauren Howard was appointed as the new IT director for the district. Her father was Dave Howard, who was a science teacher at DR for over 30 years. Lauren has helped Dayton with IT issues in the past, including this room, and wanted me to let you know that if you need her help, she would be willing to consult.
Sure.
Yeah, well, at no fee.
Even
with
better.
any IT issues. Like I said, she was a big help with the sound system here, and what to buy and where to place it, and did it when she was the IT director at Bristol Aggie. So she developed a good relationship with us. Longtime DR band director, athletic director Doug Kelly's retirement party is October 4th at the Venus de Mala restaurant. See Sean Urban for tickets. They're going fast. And lastly, this will be coming up on your agenda probably the next meeting. The Dayton Elementary Building Committee is drawing up language for a warrant article for the fall town meeting for money for a feasibility study as required by the Massachusetts School Building Assistance Program. This would be a capital outlay expenditure and would require a 2/3 vote at town meeting.
Do you know how much the warrants, they're asking at this point?
They're working on the number.
Okay,
I know over the last 2 years, FinCom has been putting money in capital stabilization. They have somewhere between 1.3 and 1.5. Feasibility was supposed to reach out to Peter Roach, and you, Mr. Karen, is the chairman, to talk about what's realistic from that stabilization account. Because obviously, recommendations by FinCom and Board of Selectmen would be coming.
Right.
And it would be prudent for them to work with both of you rather than try a fight on town floor.
sure. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holt.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah. Oh, yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman, on that, while I'm not familiar with the intimate details, in your capital stabilization fund, you have something a little bit north of $1.6 million. Most of that, it's my understanding from speaking to the school administration and to the former town administrator, came from DR itself. I'm sure you're familiar with what an excess and deficiency account is. It's a regional schools version of free cash. They have a 5% cap on that, and the excess proceeds, all that above the 5% E&D number, was deposited in capital stabilization in anticipation of this very study, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Is
I've heard
how I
one
understand
figure.
it.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm done, thank you.
I've heard one figure, and I don't know if this is true, that the state was supposed to reimburse us half of that?
At some point.
At some point, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Half of it comes back, yeah.
I know I spoke with you earlier, a couple days ago, you said there would be no town administrator's report tonight?
That is correct.
Okay, is there a selectman's report from?
I don't
either
have
one of
anything,
you?
no.
No, okay. And then, old business, there is none. New business, this is a review, discuss, and act facilities request for Prince Henry Society Family Fair and Car Show. I don't have any questions. They've done this before. They have the appropriate paperwork, Karen,
Yes, they
Yeah.
do. They were due to turn in their certificate of insurance today.
which they have here. This is a nonprofit, so I believe they're looking for the funds to be waived.
Can I speak on funds?
Sure.
I'd like to propose for a warrant article, which I'll work on the language for us to review, but, based on some recent public input, we kind of have a revolving fund for when we use the facilities. So at some point, I can kind of envision us taking in money even from nonprofits and
Right.
putting it towards things like the concrete at Spratt Field, how it's eroding, or anything like that, because
Sure.
money's so hard to come by. So I think until we have something like that, we should waive the fees.
Okay. All right, so we need a motion on the floor to approve this and to waive the fees.
I'd make a motion to approve the facilities request from Prince Henry Society Family Fair and Car Show and to waive fees.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now we have the same thing for Dayton Lions Club Annual Yard Sale. This is going to be for the town garage, though. They have all their paperwork, and they usually do. This is a nonprofit as well. Any questions?
No.
Then is there a motion on the floor?
I'll make a motion to approve the facilities request for Dayton Lions Club Annual Yard Sale and to waive any fees.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Another review, discuss, and act. Recommendation to appoint Christine Blanchard as a Dayton Housing Authority Board member. She's not here. Nobody's here to speak on her behalf or anything?
Yes, sir.
But they did reach out that they wouldn't be able to make it.
Oh, they did?
I
Oh, okay.
believe Leah did say that.
So I think this is a long-term, this has been a vacancy they've been trying to fill for a while. And it's my understanding that the housing authority, they used to all be elected officials, and then there was recent changing to the law that allows for a town-appointed tenant seat, so they're filling that vacancy.
And this is a 5-year term. Okay. So this is, again, a review, discuss, and act. Is there a motion on the floor to approve her?
I'll make the motion to appoint Christine Blanchard as the Dayton Housing Authority Board Member as presented.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? The only thing I want to point out is we usually require that they be here. I understand that they made notification to us that they could not make it, which is fine, as long as we were aware of that. And so, motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Actually, I think the correspondence we got was from the Housing Authority Director, Robbie D'Souza, couldn't be here. I'm not sure about Christine.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if that makes a difference.
It does. We've gone with the policy that they be here for appointing positions. If that's the case, then I would vote that we table it, and so that she can be here, keeping with what we've done in the past.
Okay, I'm gonna rescind my motion.
I'll make a motion that we table this appointment until Christine can attend.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I don't know that to be time sensitive, Mr. Chairman, so that's
okay.
quite appropriate. Yep.
Sure. This is a review, discuss, and act, Council on Aging surplus items. We don't have to go through the items because they are listed here in the agenda in the file. So is there a motion to remove these surplus items from our inventory?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I think you're going to have more surplus properties, disposition requests on your next, probably 2 agendas.
Okay.
Or so.
Great.
Things have piled up enough, we got to get rid of some stuff.
Sure, that's happened.
Yeah.
All right, we're moving on to candidate interviews. Mr. Bernie, how are you, sir?
Very well.
Seats all warm for you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, the chair and I spoke earlier, and I think I sent on some questions to the board, and I think the format that we all talked about using with regards to the process is similar to the one we use in most of the communities that we work with now, whereby we serve as or in this case I, will serve as a facilitator to the interview, asking the primary question. Basically, the way that we work this is we have the actual, we try to work out the topics that are of interest to a community, and then we ask a lead question to allow the candidate to respond to that topic, and then allow for the board members to engage in a dialogue and discussion with the candidate around that topic with follow-up questions, or we've given you some probes here that are ideas for those types of follow-up questions, but clearly you will probably have some of your own. There may be overlap with some of the questions, and so in that case, I will try to, again, facilitate by not necessarily asking the candidate to repeat what they've already said on a particular topic that they may have covered within another topic, but at least I'll bring it up and ask if there's additional questions, or if you need additional questions, and we can dig down into some of those areas as well. Any questions that I can ask that you might have for me regarding the process? We had a very good meeting yesterday with the department heads here in this room. All 3 candidates were here and participated, and lively discussions, some good questions, and I thought it went well. I thought all of the candidates seemed to be very well received by the department heads, and I think you have, again, as I said earlier, I think you have 3 very good candidates for you to speak with tonight.
Did a lot of the department heads show up, Karen? Do you know?
I think we probably had rough thinking here about how many people we had. We probably had about 15.
15? Oh, great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's about what we have.
Okay, we had a full house then.
Yeah.
So, right, so.
Wonderful.
All right.
I'm sure everybody's full of opinions, and it all comes down to the interview.
Exactly.
And how the selectmen feel it will gel with the town.
Right, exactly. Great.
Okay.
All right. So your first candidate, I will have her come to the hot seat up here, is Maggie Clark, and we will begin our discussion.
Hi, Maggie.
Hi, good evening.
My name is Peter.
Nice
This
to
is
meet you.
Nicole and
Hi.
Mrs. Mark, and obviously we're the selectmen, select board, or whatever you want to call us. And don't be nervous. I know it's so easy to say that, but you're in an interview, and everybody's nervous in an interview. We can repeat questions if necessary. He's going to ask the questions,
Okay.
we can repeat them. If you
Okay.
feel like you're getting in the weeds and want to start over again, we can do that. It's whatever you feel comfortable doing.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you, appreciate that.
We've all had your documentation, so I think everybody is well versed on you. And Bernie, if you can take it away, please.
Sure.
Could I interrupt for 1 second? I'm sorry, I waited too long to talk.
No, that's all right.
I'm going to abstain from
Oh,
the
right,
interview
I'm sorry.
process.
Yep.
I have what I perceive as a conflict where I couldn't give have an impartial judgment for our townspeople. And in the past, when I abstained from votes, I stayed up here and interfered with the process. And
Okay.
that's not fair to my colleagues. So I think it's best that I'm just going to step
Step out.
down.
Sure.
And it is a very important issue, so I apologize to our folks in Dayton, but I know we're in good hands, and
Great.
so,
Thank
Well,
you, Mark.
thank you for
You guys.
pointing that out. You're going to be missed.
thank you. I'll be right in the audience.
Okay.
Okay, well, you actually stole one of my opening lines.
Oh,
that,
okay.
That's all right. The board has seen your materials. We've had a chance to review your resume, your cover letter, obviously, that came with it, the reference comments that we've received from the people that we've spoken to about the work that you've done in the various communities that you've been involved, and they've reviewed your writing sample. So they have all of that. Most importantly, they have your resume. So we don't need you to go through the entire background, but if you could briefly talk about where you've been, what has brought you to this point that you're applying for this job in Dayton, and why you think you would be successful here.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm
You're
thrilled.
welcome.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Good.
So I won't go on too long, but as a brief amount of background, I grew up in Rhode Island. I went to Providence College. I was a math major, and after graduation, I worked for a couple of different software companies. First, primarily on the technical side, and then I moved more into like the business consulting kind of software, and that was a good career at the time. But then I ended up having my first baby, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 in kind of rapid succession, and was a stay-at-home mom for quite a long time. That was great, loved it. I was lucky to be able to do that, and in some ways, you know, it's interesting how life plays out, because had I stayed on the software track, I would certainly not be sitting here today. But some years ago, when my children were still young but a little bit older, I started a job at the senior center in Plainville. It was a part-time job, very minor position, but it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. There were some great people and some great programming going on at the senior center in Plainville, and that was kind of my first foray into public service, if you will. That job, I ended up leaving that position for a variety of reasons. The scheduling wasn't working out because my kids were still young, but I really loved it there and ended up staying on for a time as a volunteer. And through my connections at the senior center, I was able to get a different position later with the Board of Health, another part-time position. It was probably not even enough money to pay the cable bill at the time. It was very small, but long story short, that led to a different position. A part-time position led to a full-time position, and I really enjoyed them all. I enjoyed them all. You can see from my resume the departments I've worked in. But then also kind of on a parallel track, if you will, when my children were young, ran for school committee, primarily because I was dissatisfied with something at the time and decided that, yeah, what the heck, I'm not gonna sit here and gripe, I'm gonna fix it. So I ran for school committee, I was elected to school committee. While I was on the school committee, they appointed me to the permanent building committee. And that probably was the experience that kind of changed my thinking in terms of, this isn't just something I'm doing at the moment, this is something I think I'd really like to do. That was a great project. We built a new town hall, a new public safety facility. I was involved in that project from soup to nuts, from beginning to end, and loved almost every minute of it. It was a great experience. And so at some point I decided, yeah, this is what I want to do. I decided to go and get my master's in public administration because I thought if I want to be serious about this, I need to act serious about this. I eventually left working in Plainville, which was, I loved working in Plainville, I loved it, but I was kind of stuck in a position where if I wanted to do certain things, I couldn't be an employee there. So I had thought maybe I'd like to be on the finance committee, or maybe I'd like to be a selectman. And so those are things you couldn't do if you still work there. So I left Plainville, went to Taunton, where I am, as you can see, the clerk of committees. That is, I keep saying I think the title is bad. I think that it doesn't really capture the essence of the job, but I'm essentially the point of contact for the city council in City Hall.
Okay.
They're all, they have full-time jobs, and when they need something, they'll reach out to me. And I also, when you see clerk of committees, everything that's referred to committee comes through me. I keep it organized, keep it scheduled, send out the documents, organize the materials for the counselors, so on and so forth. So I do, however, miss working in a town. I miss the people, I miss the connections with people that I feel that you have in a town, and I'd like to work in a town. And really, I really do want to be a town administrator. I've seen what goes on, and I feel that's something I could excel at. So here I am,
Okay,
in a small town, looking to be a town administrator.
sure.
Okay, great. Can you tell us a little bit about your sense of, what do you know about Dayton? If someone were to, what's your sense of
Yeah,
what
all
Dayton
right.
is?
So my sense, and I hope I don't offend anyone if I say something that's not accurate, or if I've heard something that's not accurate, I don't want to offend you in any way. I sense that it's a small town with kind of a small town vibe. I've heard that there's resistance to development, although reading through the economic development plan that I was able to find online, which was pretty recent, it does seem like there's a path forward for some development. So certainly everything I've heard about the resistance to development didn't play out in what I read in the economic development plan. So perhaps that's, not entirely accurate what I've heard.
Sure.
I think that the people here like their open space. That's the sense I get. They like their community. They like their sense of community. That's the sense I get.
Okay.
Okay, great. In your discussing your clerk of committee roles, the one aspect that I think that I'd like to hear a little bit more about is how much you get involved with sort of doing the analytical work or the outside contact work for the council, which is somewhat, when we talked in your preliminary interview with us, we spent a little bit of time talking about that type of work and how comparable that is. And you're in a position, you haven't, I don't think you've really spoken too much about it, but you're a member of the Board of Selectmen in Plainville.
Right.
So you know what a town administrator does.
Yep.
And I'd be curious as to what you see
Kind of.
taking place over there with your administrator and what you...
Okay, so I think the parallel between what I do in Taunton and what I would be doing here is the making sure that the Board of Selectmen has all the information they need to make a decision. And I feel that that's my job in Taunton, is that as things come before the committees, it's important that all the information that I'm able to gather is presented to them each week. And I think that that is the same exact thing that I would be doing here. I think that's the parallel between the two positions. I think that this is a greater responsibility than the job in Taunton, as much as it's an important job. Really, I'm not a decision maker in Taunton. I'm more of a facilitator. Whereas here, I feel like there'd be certainly you're the decision makers, but my role would be greater.
Your role would be what?
Greater.
Greater, okay. Sorry.
moving on to management and leadership style. The board's ready? Talk to us about your leadership style. In terms of, you've got some, in your reference comments, people talk about your people skills, your, how you, and I think we'll be talking certainly about some of your project management skills. But could you talk to us about how, if you were town administrator here in Dayton, how would you go about building a sense of team, managing that team, and leading? Not only the town organization, but becoming a community leader as well.
So I was thinking about this question, thinking this might be asked, like, what is your management style? And I'm a doer. There's no denying it. And if I said differently, I'd be lying. I'm a doer by nature. However, I also recognize that a good team is made up of a lot of talented people, and to hold people back from using their talents to the fullest is a mistake, because if you want the team to succeed, you want all of the players to succeed. I don't, this is not even actually town government, but I'll tell you this story because it's fresh in my mind. I'm involved in this organization in my town that we kind of just got off the ground, and it's geared towards putting on community events. And I've been very involved. But there's this other woman who is fabulous with social media and marketing types of stuff. And we put together this booklet with our sponsors, and I certainly could have taken it and done it. However, she was so good. And it would have been a mistake for me to step in. And the timeline was getting a little crunched, and I was like, oh gosh, is it gonna happen? Is it gonna happen? But, I made a conscious decision, and I said, no, she's got it. She knows what she's doing. Why am I even second guessing her? And as much as that it may be my impulse to step in, as I get older, as I get wiser, I realize that you make a mistake by not capitalizing on the talents of other people. I'm not the best at everything, and some people are. As far as building a team here in Dayton, when we were here at the yesterday at the department head meeting, one of the department heads, whose name I will never remember, said, Michael Mullen had a habit of calling us all together periodically, and is that something you would consider continuing? And I was like, absolutely, that's fabulous. Why not? That's a great way to build a team. That's so simple to have, I don't know, pizza, or, it's so simple, but just gathering goes a long way sometimes. I was really excited to see on your website that it's gonna be your 250th anniversary. Like, that's right up my alley. I got caught up probably more than I needed to in looking at the different things that they've been talking about. I'm like, that's fabulous. What a great community that this is what they wanna do. And they're starting so far in advance, I thought it was great. I think that, I think I would fit right in.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not our 250, it's the American, we're celebrating America's 250.
Oh, geez,
So,
I misunderstood
no,
the whole thing.
that's okay. One of the quick questions I have for you, you say you're a doer. Do you
Yeah.
find yourself now doing more things because you just assume get it done because it's easier? Or you said something about delegating, which is great.
Yeah.
And my concern would be developing the people around you as much as getting things accomplished.
100%.
So being a doer is great, but it's also a hindrance.
I agree, and I recognize that about myself, to be honest, is that's my inclination to step in and do things. But I really do think as I get older and wiser, I'm more and more aware of the importance of capitalizing on other people's talents.
Okay.
I think that's really important, and I worked in a small town, and I was a very small position, and I was very grateful to all the opportunities that I had to develop my skills and to work on things that were not necessarily my job. And I think that's important, and I think that not only does it develop the team when people have the opportunity to learn, it makes them feel good about themselves. And why would we not do that?
Right.
I think that's important.
Okay.
And I've benefited from that myself, from having those types of opportunities.
Great. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Bernie.
No,
I'm
you're
sorry.
not. This is your interview. I'm just facilitating. So, and we may come back. Actually, we may come back to that topic. I have
Sure.
a couple of questions along those lines, but I do want to give you an opportunity to sort of take one of the requests of the board to us was that we put forth a question to the candidates to gather information about their perspective on collaboration, but also do it in a way that we could test out your communication skills. So you wrote about, I asked you to do this in memo form. So you wrote a memo that detailed out your experience as chair of the Permanent Building Committee in Plainville, the result being the new town hall, and why collaboration made that project successful. So if you could, now, we've seen it in writing, if you could verbally communicate to us about that project and why how collaboration occurred and why it was important.
Okay. Very proud of what we did on this project, to be honest with you. Very proud, and I think most people in Plainville feel a sense of pride in that project. And the reason a lot of people feel pride is probably because of the way we collaborated. From the very beginning, we were very deliberate about making sure that we sought, not just accepted feedback, but sought feedback. We met in various places, various times, targeting different audiences, the senior center, the various meetings, the schools, wherever we could take our show on the road, we took our show on the road. And what we would generally do, once we got to a point, was we would have a brief presentation, documents to hand out, copies of plans, and then as many questions as people had. And why I think this was so important was that not only did people feel a sense of ownership in the project, but frankly, it made the project better, because there were times where those questions led us to a different place than we were already headed. The one that I detailed in the memo was the situation with the library trustees, who brought to our attention that the way the parking had been designed, they didn't have any dedicated parking, and we were kind of like, yeah, so what? But the more we talked to them, the more we realized the importance of that they had, moms with babies and strollers and books and things to return quickly, and they really needed some dedicated parking. And so we were able to go back and forth and eventually change the plans. It was not a major change. It was a slight change. And, I think everybody agreed it was a better design in the end. And had we not been seeking that input, or had we not been open to that input, it would not have been as good of a design as it ended up. So I feel pleased with that. I also wrote about how we used MassCore to build the table in Town Hall. I'm very proud of that, even though it's such a small thing. We had gone looking everywhere for custom designers to make a big, beautiful, because it's a beautiful room. Our meeting room is a beautiful room, and we thought it really needs a beautiful table in the front. And the costs were exorbitant, and we that just wasn't something we could do. And somebody made the suggestion. I honestly don't remember who made the suggestion that you talk to MassCore. They can do this kind of thing. I think they just make flags. So they came out, they worked with us, they helped us design it, and it was pennies on the dollar of what we were planning to spend, and it's beautiful. And I feel really proud of that as well. And then I think that when we went to town meeting, the expectation was that this was a really large project for Plainville. We'd never done anything like this. The expectation was that there would be a lot of discussion, hemming and hawing, concern. With good reason, it was a big project. But I think because we had put so much time on the front end in having discussions and questions and fleshing everything out, when it came time for the vote, people were already pretty satisfied that their questions had been answered. And I don't think it was unanimous. There were a couple no's out in the audience, but I think we all felt good about the fact that we had done our job.
Okay, thank you.
Another issue under leadership is in management that we have here, and I just wanted to sort of, being a town administrator, being a selectman, and the three of you are all a selectman, so you can appreciate this, it's very rare, you actually described a case where there was no opposition, but oftentimes there's conflict. Mm-hmm. And one of your references referred to your thick skin, because sometimes the town administrators come under fire. Can you describe to us a a conflict that you have encountered that you feel sort of epitomizes your ability to work through and bring sides to a solution and build consensus?
Yeah, I've got to think of an exact example. I do think as I've gotten older, I have gotten much more comfortable with conflict. It's funny how I think, you know, as a younger adult, that made me very uncomfortable, the idea of conflict. And as I get older, I really think that there's value in conflict. There's value in a difference of opinions. And I think if you can look at conflict as just a difference of opinions, it's a positive thing. It's not a negative thing, really, because many times a difference of opinion brings you to see things a little bit differently, and I'm grateful for that. So I worked in the building department. I had oftentimes people who would come to the counter who were not happy with the zoning enforcement officer who had been to their house or their project, and I was always the first person there to talk to them. Generally, not 100%, but often people just want to be heard, to be honest. And listening to someone, and listening to them, truly listening, I think goes a long way. You're never going to have everyone happy, and I think being comfortable with that is the right place to be honest.
Okay. All right, all the soft skills stuff is, well, for now is over. So now we get into the technical aspects, more technical aspects of the job. And nothing's more technical than numbers. You were a math major, so that's helpful in this regard. Can you talk to us about your experience with, and your understanding of municipal finance, your experience with budgeting, and there may be some follow-up questions that relate to that afterwards.
Okay. All right. So obviously, I've not been a town administrator before, so I have not really created a town budget from soup to nuts. I've not done that. I have been, like you, a selectman so I'm in charge of the budget as a whole, oversee the budget as a whole, but I've not been in a position to create an entire town budget. I've done departmental budgets. I do the budget now for the city council. I create the budget and then oversee the budget. I did that in Plainville for multiple departments. I was involved in the budget process for the school committee. I've been involved in budgets for projects. But I do have a pretty good understanding of the laws as they apply to municipal finance. We were in an unfortunate position a few years ago in Plainville where we were looking for an override, so I think that a lot of us in Plainville quickly learned the ins and outs of Proposition 2.5 and what a debt exclusion and what an override mean, and how you calculate the levy limit and how you calculate the levy ceiling, and the concept of new growth and how important that is to your bottom line. So I feel pretty comfortable with it, but I clearly have not created a budget for an entire town to this point.
Right. Over in Plainville, as a member of the board, has the board adopted financial policies relative
Yes.
to, relative to?
Yes, and that's something that was new to Plainville. We hadn't had financial policies before, and that I can't really take credit for that. That was something that was pushed by our town administrator, and I think one of the primary impetuses for that was to increase our bond rating, because that apparently is something that they do look for, which I was not aware of that, but, so now we have a set of financial policies that have been adopted, and our intention is to review them periodically to keep them up to date, but, and on top of just helping the bond rating, it's certainly good practice to make sure that everybody's on the same page, and there's a clear understanding of what the expectations are townwide.
Do you do fiscal planning over there?
That's
This is just interviewing you for town administrator here, not necessarily.
No,
but another best practice is forecasts and fiscal planning.
So we have our first forecast that was just put forward to us just within the past 6 months, I think. But what a great tool. what a great tool, because the way Julie, our finance director in Plainville, has laid it out is based on certain assumptions in terms of what the historical growth has been, what the historical growth in permit fees has been, every category imaginable, and she's laid it out over, I think she's gone to 10 years, actually. I mean, certainly there's assumptions built in there, and it's not foolproof by any stretch of the imagination, but it was really eye-opening to see that over the next few years, we're kind of not in the best shape as I would have expected. So that, I think it's a very valuable tool. I think it's a very, very valuable tool, and that's something I would enjoy digging into, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay, great. I was listening to someone, apropos of nothing, I was listening to someone the other day talking about retirement, which I hope to do someday, but was talking about when you're doing a financial plan for your retirement, the best thing is to actually run a deficit, if you will, or put all of your hopes and dreams and plans in there, and then what your money is,
Yep.
so that then it forces you to prioritize.
Yep.
And many communities
Makes
don't
sense.
necessarily do
Yeah.
that, and so.
Makes a lot of
so
sense,
if it's-
though.
Yeah. So, anyway, any fiscal planning questions?
Yes,
that people have?
we're faced with the situation of BP, Bristol Plymouth, coming on and funding our portion of the debt. The town, our payment's around $900,000 a year that we just don't have.
Right.
Not that I'm looking for you here today for ideas of how to, but how to accomplish that, making that $900,000 up. But we are going to have a meeting on Monday, an information meeting about the debt exclusion. And we haven't talked about Proposition 2.5 override. I don't think that's even going to be on the table. What would your approach be to convincing the public, based on your experience with financial numbers, to sway them one way or another as to whether we should adopt that or not?
It's a little difficult without having solid numbers in front of me
Sure.
from each department, but I think what I would probably do is actually run the numbers, how the budget would look
Yep.
if the debt exclusion fails.
Okay.
And do it realistically,
Yep.
because I think that was a mistake that happened in Plainville, where it was kind of like it was more of a threat than reality, if that makes any sense.
No, yes, it does, yeah.
And I don't think that does anyone any, I don't think that does you any good. Threatening, people see right through that. I think that what I think would be the best way would be to really, really, really put real numbers to it. And what does that mean?
Yep.
So if the library's gonna be cut by, I don't know, 17%, whatever the number is, then what does that mean? Is that a person? Is that a half a person? Is that supplies? What does that really mean? And I think that would be the best way to do it, is to
Okay.
really make it concrete.
Yep,
Because it's true.
yep,
You know, I mean, like, if, without that money, this is, it's not pretend, it's real money. Without it, there has to be a consequence, and what is the consequence?
okay.
That's
So
what I
you
would
would
do.
take that approach of, this is what the worst-case scenario is going to be?
After making sure that I've really looked for every efficiency I can find.
Yeah, assuming you've done that, yes.
Right,
Maybe I'm assuming too much, or not giving you enough information, I guess. No, I'm more interested in how you would approach, and you've answered it, how you would approach communicating with the public that we have some financial
Yeah.
constraints here, and this is the pro of passing it, and this is the con of passing it.
Right. I think being as open and honest and truthful is
Yep.
the way to go. Because there inevitably will be consequences.
Right,
And what exactly are those consequences?
okay. We've done that.
Okay.
We've laid it all out, and it's difficult,
It's
but
very tough.
we're not going to go down that road right now, so, okay, thank you. Nicole, do you have any questions? yet?
No.
Okay.
Related to finance, and you probably heard it from the department heads yesterday, they actually had some questions about this. But many communities find that because money's tight, that they have a need for alternative revenues. There's a couple different ways to create new revenues. And we'll talk about a couple of those in a second, but another couple of those in a second. But specifically, the issue was raised yesterday, and we have it as one of our questions, of grants, of experience with going out and
Right.
identifying and finding money, and how, whether you've done that in the past, and if you haven't done that in the past, or how you would go about identifying the money, and thoughts about how you
Yeah.
would pursue that.
Yeah, it is funny, because that did come up yesterday, and I was thinking about it last night, and I'm like, I don't think I gave myself enough credit on that one. So I've never had pursuing grants as a core part of my position. That's the truth. There's no denying it. But I have had some involvement with various grant opportunities. And I don't know why I didn't think of this yesterday, but even when I worked at the senior center, I assisted the director in pursuing a grant there. When I was in the building department, unrelated to my job, I assisted the police chief with a grant. I pursued a small grant on my own, which I was successful with during the COVID days, which was a COVID-related grant, but I was happy to be successful with that. I was involved in a grant we received in Plainville to create an ADA transition plan. I don't know why I wasn't thinking of that either. I guess because it's never been a primary focus of my position, or it's never even really been my responsibility. It's just something that I've had the opportunity, luckily, to get involved with for a variety of reasons. And if you gave me another month or two, I might have a nice success story, because I'm involved right now in pursuing some grants for this other nonprofit I'm involved in. So if you gave me a month or two, I might have a good success story, but not today.
How do you go about finding out what grants are available?
I think that, so for the nonprofit, that was pretty clear to me. That was through the Cultural Council. That really was
Yeah.
a no-brainer. That wouldn't.
Some
was
are
just-
easy, sure.
Yeah, that was an easy one. I was looking, actually, because I'm like, this is important to Dayton, and I need to make sure that I can do this. And there is information on the MMA website. That's a resource that I would refer to. I have a really good relationship with the old Director of Planning Development who was in Plainville. He's since retired, but I have a really good relationship with him, and he was very successful with pursuing grants. I frankly would pick his brain, to be honest with you, and he was one of my references, so
Yeah,
and it sounds like he said all nice things,
Yes.
so I think he would help me out. But I would, lean on people I know who have been successful. I would look to resources like the MMA website.
Right.
I know the resources are there. And I know it's important to the town. I know that that's been part of the success story over the
Right.
past several years, so I would want to continue that
Okay.
success story.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify that you haven't had any grant writing experience solo.
I did have one small grant I did on my own.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, but I mean, it was small.
Doesn't matter how small it is, it's a grant.
I guess, yeah, I know, every penny counts, right? But yeah, I did do that one on my own. I pursued it on my own, I wrote it on my own, and I was successful, but it was not a budget, wasn't gonna fix any budgets.
Sure.
Okay, great. Our next project is actually, or our next topic is project management. And if the board is comfortable with this, I'll probably skip over most of this, because we've heard about your project management skills related to the town hall project. But I am interested in again, one of your references does speak to your understanding of procurement and bidding. So I'm interested in hearing what aspects of that you were involved with. You aren't MCPPO certified. There are many managers that aren't, but it's easy to achieve that. But
When I was in Plainville, I started the process. I went through the first course and took the first test. There's really not any reason for me to be MCPPO certified in Taunton, so I kind of let it drop. I don't know if that first test is still under the deadline, if I'd have
Sure.
to take it again or not, but I may have the first test under my belt. So with the project, obviously that was through the whole procurement process. We did that from soup to nuts. And I also feel like I've learned a lot about procurement working in Taunton, to be honest, because they have a pretty developed procurement department, and I've been, as much as I haven't done the job, I've been able to kind of glean the importance of all the laws and understanding of all the laws of procurement from the procurement director in Taunton. I think that it's a complicated topic. It can be difficult.
You would be the procurement director.
Yes, yes. So I presume I would have to become MCPPO certified. And that's something I think I would need to start really almost day one. That would have to be one of my top priorities coming
Sure.
in, is that's something I would need to do so that the town has someone on the books
Right.
who is MCPPO certified. So I do have experience with procurement, particularly through the building project, and a decent understanding of the laws. There's a lot to it though, and
Sure.
there's more to learn.
How long is that process, the MCPPO process?
Phew, I was a manager for 30 years and I never became MCPPO, so I'm not a good one to ask that.
Okay.
But I think it takes about under a year to do
Yeah, I wanna
that.
say that sounds about right. I know the first course was over, I think it was maybe a week or 2 week. I'm not even sure, but.
The benefit is that they've now moved them. They used to be all in Boston. Everyone had to hike into Boston. They now moved
Now
them
it's
to
remote.
online
Okay.
courses, so. The other way that communities solve financial gaps, and you've touched upon it a little bit when you were talking about your knowledge of Dayton, is building the tax base through economic development. The challenge, of course, of that is that, so I think we're interested in hearing your background in that area of how you would work to continue to improve the town's economic growth. But as you've already pointed out in your description of Dayton, like many communities, it wants growth, it just doesn't want to change.
Right. That's a challenge.
It's like retaining community character becomes important. So sort of how you, your background with economic development, but how you would, and maybe your experience in Plainville relates to this, of how you've been able to maintain community character
Yeah.
in certain areas,
Yeah.
in most of the town.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's gonna be some areas that may
Right.
not.
So I think this is like the never-ending challenge in towns. It's exactly what every single town, I think, faces, is that everybody loves their town because it is what it is. It's not because you have shopping malls
Right.
and warehouses. That's not what makes you love your town. You love your town because of its character, because of the people, because of the community, and you hate to see that change. I feel that myself. So I understand that. And so that is clearly the challenge. And I think that you folks have done yourselves a good service, though, in laying out your economic development plan, where it seems like a lot of these questions have kind of been fleshed out about areas of town that are agreeable for potential development. I say that with caution because, they're not making any more land. And I think that any development, you've got to be really cautious about the location and the type. I always say that, there's really three things that are important when it comes to economic development. There's the zoning, which is touched upon in the plan. There's permitting. I think that having an easy permitting process goes a long way. I think that's important. There's infrastructure, which again is touched on in the plan, and that's a challenge because water lines and sewer lines are not cheap. That's a challenge. And then the other thing that the plan kind of touches on, which I really don't have much experience with, is dealing with the brownfields. That's, a challenge, certainly, that I would have to dig into. But I think the most important thing really is making sure that we're cautious about keeping Dayton. But there's no question about the fact that commercial development takes some of the pressure off of the residents. There's no question about that. It grows the tax base without sticking it to the residents. So that's
Sure.
gotta balance the scales on that.
Okay.
And that, you guys will have to lead me on that one.
Yes.
That's a community value decision, so, okay. Let's talk about personnel management. Your background in terms of, there's so much that goes into that, right? There's the hiring terminating, if necessary, disciplining, holding people accountable, motivating people. What's been your experience, what's been your background and experience in those areas? In your positions now, or, we haven't really talked too much about your private sector experience, and I'm not sure whether you had that, those responsibilities there, but how do you go about managing people and your experience in terms of hiring, particularly in terms of hiring and holding people accountable and motivating them?
Yeah, so in my job now, I don't hire or fire anyone. I guess that as a selectman, we review the town administrator. He was on before I was a selectman, so I do have that experience. As part of the school committee, same thing. We oversaw the superintendent as well as a couple other positions there. I probably do have more experience in the private sector, to be honest, even though I was a much younger woman. Because as I moved up the ranks, there were certain people, I was not hiring anyone, but I did oversee people and made sure that they followed through on their tasks. But as far as a style for that, which I think that's what you're looking for, I personally like to lead by example. I like to be a hard worker, and I find that people respond to that generally. I think it would be very difficult to have to terminate someone, and I would want to be sure that if it came to that, I had crossed all my T's and dotted all my I's so that the town would not be in any sort of liability if someone was let go. So I would be very cautious with that, making sure that everything was documented well in advance.
Sure.
And leading up to that point.
Go ahead.
Do you feel like you have an open door policy when it comes to residents and town employees coming in? Or, what is your
Yeah.
policy as far as that would go?
Yeah, I mean, I think there may be times when there are meetings, and I don't think it could be 100% open door, because you certainly need to have time to have one-on-one meetings and have, but generally, yes, I want to hear from people. As town administrator, I work for you, I work for the people, you're my employers.
Okay.
And it's not the other way around.
Yep.
You are my employers, so I'm here for you.
Sure. A lot of this stuff is technical, which you can learn. That's easy. Not that anybody can do it, but it's easy. But we can't teach you to have a good disposition, and we can't teach you to have a management style that's not authentic. So I'm really concerned about your interaction, your management style with residents and with the employees of the town. Some managers' opinion is go through the chain of command, and when it gets to me, I'll handle it. Others, it's I want to know right away, and I'm going to intervene and get it done, or whatever the situation might call for. So I guess what I'm asking is, it's important that you interact with our residents and our the town employees, but to what extent do you follow the chain of command and feel like your door's going to be closed, but if you're not going to be able to handle all the people that just want to
Right,
come in and
right.
say hi to you,
Right, and I think I
or talk
understand
to
what
you?
you're asking, right. I think that the other question is, I don't need to be stepping on anyone's toes. If this is something that the police chief could handle just fine, there's no reason for me to be involved. And, maybe that's the answer.
Right.
Because I don't want to be I don't need to be stepping on anyone's toes. I'm sure I'll have plenty to
Yeah.
do myself. And I also think that it's important to recognize that there are other people who are experts on topics, not that I'm not going to be the expert
Right.
on everything. And I don't think I am afraid to point someone to a different resource.
Sure.
But I would like to, I guess what I'm excited about is to get to know everyone.
Yep.
And when I say I have an open door policy, I think that's more what I'm thinking of, is that I really am excited to get to know you, to get to know the people who work in town hall. I've heard fabulous things, they're
Sure.
great people. I'm interested to get to know the people who make up the fabric of Dayton.
Right.
So,
We don't want you working 10, 12 hours a day. That's
Okay.
not good for the town, and it's not good for you.
okay.
And
I see what you're saying, yeah.
So, time management comes in big when you're a town administrator, as it is with probably most jobs. And I'm going to assume, because of the positions that you've had, you manage your time well. It sounds like you've had a lot of success doing that. And we come from a couple of town administrators that have different work styles. So it's important that you fit that balance of what we're used to and where our weaknesses are. So I guess with your management style being the way it is it, hey, let me work my 12 hours a day and I'm going to get this job done? Or is it striking a balance so that your time is efficient and, you say you work hard and that you're a doer. Those has pros and cons. And I guess we don't want you to burn out is one of the points that I'm trying to make.
I think that's a fair point. And I don't want to burn out either. I have a family. I have other things I'm involved in, and I would like to be able to continue that. So I think I'm going to have to look to be efficient.
Yeah.
Especially, in the beginning, I think there'll be a curve, a learning curve, and there may be some long hours to get started. I kind of anticipate that until I really get a good solid feel for how this is going to go.
Sure.
That's my expectation. But once I get past that stage of finding my way, I certainly need to have a balance. I think anybody would.
Sure.
So yes, but I am excited to meet everyone, and
Okay.
especially in the beginning, I think that it's important.
Yeah, you're
And
going to
if
get a lot of different opinions
Right.
when you first start.
Yeah, absolutely, but I
and
want to hear them, and
One of the things about the residents of Dayton is they're not afraid to give their opinions.
Yep.
Oh,
well, it's their town.
Yeah, absolutely, and they usually received well, so, okay.
So I think that in the beginning, I really would like to have an open door policy.
Yep.
Because I really do want to get to know everyone. I want to understand what the issues are. I want to understand what your concerns are and your concerns are, and there may be some long hours in the beginning. But then once I settle in, I think that it will be a lot easier to direct people to the different resources, once I really understand
Sure.
what those
What those
resources
resources
are.
are. Sure.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. Nicole, how were you?
No,
All set still?
I didn't know if you were reading my notes, though,
Oh,
because that's what I
no.
had just written when you asked it.
Thank you. Bernie, it's up to you now.
Yep, just a couple more. I just wanted, your background in collective bargaining.
Yep, so I was fortunate on the school committee. I was part of the collective bargaining team. So we negotiated contracts with the teachers, the custodians, the paraprofessionals, everyone in the school, basically. And then actually in Plainville, for a time, I was on the other side of the table negotiating for my union. So I have a fair amount of collective bargaining experience.
Okay, good.
Okay. We've kind of touched upon this a little bit, and we're trying to bring this, not to belabor any of these points, but I guess we've talked about the open door policy and interacting with citizens and and you've talked about how you communicate with citizens, particularly with the example that you gave with the town hall project that you worked on. But it's important, I think, Dayton, like many communities, has really prioritized building citizen trust and open government, transparency, any actions you've taken along those lines. And then I guess an overriding question is, you'd be new to Dayton. How would you immerse yourself and become part of the fabric of the community?
So the first part about transparency, I feel very, very strongly that the more information we can get out there, the better. And I feel that as a citizen, to be honest, even more so than as a leader. I think that, town meeting is a fabulous, fabulous thing. I love the fact that any person can come to town meeting and make a motion on the floor and in real time impact the outcome of that meeting and the next year of the town. But I think it's important that if we're gonna put that kind of responsibility on people, that they have all the information they need to make an informed decision. And I think that's really important. I'm actually proud of what I did in Taunton there, where I kind of changed the way that the meetings were posted, so it was clearer what time the committee meeting started. It may seem like a small thing, but changes in a city can be difficult, and I was able to do that. I changed the way that they approved their minutes, which I feel kind of proud about that too. It might seem small, but it felt like a little bit of a tweak that made it much clearer to the public what was going on. So I was happy to be able to do that. There was a second part.
The second part was, we traditionally ask, this is one of our traditional questions is, how will you'd be new to Dayton.
Yeah. Oh, and
And it's like, how do you sort of become a member of the community so that people know you?
Yeah.
Without burning someone out, how do we get
Right.
people to know and how would you learn to interact and build relationships in the town?
So, aside from work, I think that if I could find some fun things to be involved in, that goes a long way, like volunteering at an event, volunteering to help out with this. I think that's kind of an organic way to get to know people as a person and to feel a part of the community. I know in my own community, that's what's made me feel the most part of my community, the things that I'm involved in. And I would like to look for ways that I could be involved here in Dayton, again, that, without being here every minute of the day, ways that I could meet people in that capacity. I think that would be valuable.
Last question, another relationship question. The most important relationship that you would have is with the board. What do you envision as what that relationship would look like? And how would you communicate with the board and work hand in hand with them?
So, board are my bosses. That's the relationship. I would work for you. That's the relationship. As far as, I'm saying that kind of flippantly, but that's the truth. I mean, all direction would need to come from the board, and that's how I would proceed. As far as communication, I think whatever works best for you is what I would like to do. I have found that in working in Taunton, I have 9 counselors who I communicate with regularly, and they all get the same emails, and but there's certain people who prefer a text message for something that's gonna be quick. There's certain people that like a phone call, and that took me a little time to kind of figure out the quirks of each person and what works best for them. And I feel like that's part of my job, is to communicate with them however it works for them. They have full-time jobs, they're busy people, and it's my job to communicate how they'd like to be communicated with. So, I don't know if that answers the question.
Sure. Yeah. We're a fairly young board. Nobody's been here longer than one term. And we rely on the town administrator a lot. Not to make the decisions for us, but to give us all the information that we could possibly need. So there's going to be a period of you not knowing and us not knowing. Because, like I said, we would normally look to you for an answer, more of the technical questions that, grants and anything, budgets, and you can imagine what I'm talking about. I feel like it's more of a partnership than a boss-subordinate relationship.
Okay.
It's you to give us the pros and cons of something and us to make that decision.
Okay.
What's your style like when it comes to not knowing answers and finding out what those answers are going to be? Is it something that I'll take my list and I'll let you know tomorrow, or is it?
I guess it depends on what it is.
Okay.
And if it's something I can find out quickly, then I will. If it's something that takes a little bit longer, but I think my hope would be to set the expectations for how long I think it would take me to
Sure.
get that information.
One of the things that is complicated in being a select woman, you have to bounce from subject to subject. Your agenda doesn't flow with ease, there's so many things on an agenda that
Yep.
that you have to be aware of that you'd have to know the answers to. So I guess what I'm looking for is, you would come to these meetings prepared. So an item on the agenda, you're going to have an answer for us or anticipate what the questions are going to be in
Certainly.
advance.
Certainly.
To have that information for us.
I guess I meant more that you're my bosses in the sense that you would provide to me your priorities.
Sure.
And that would become my priorities.
Yeah.
I certainly would expect that I would come to a meeting prepared with whatever I expect are
Yeah.
gonna be questions that are gonna be, I mean, I'm sure I'm gonna flub some.
Yeah.
That's gonna happen, but,
I flub them all the time.
but I don't want to.
Yeah.
You know, I would certainly wanna come with whatever information I think I'm gonna need that
Yeah.
night, to provide that to you, to provide it to the public, you know, and as much as possible, provide that to you in advance.
Sure. Okay. Bernie, are you set with everything?
I'm all
that
set,
you have
just
been told?
if
Do you
any
have
questions that you have, and
That's it. Okay. Well,
and if Maggie has any questions for you?
yeah, Peggy, how about questions for us, like what I had for dinner, anything?
No, I think I'm pretty good, actually. Yeah, but just thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
I really
This
appreciate
was
the
a
opportunity.
Very informative, and you did a great job.
Well, thank you.
I'm glad you were relaxed. Maybe you weren't inside, but it went nice.
Well, thank
Well,
you.
thank you for your time.
No, and thank you for having me. It's great to meet you both.
Very nice to meet you.
We do have some time, if any, we've set aside time, if any members
Yeah.
of the public want to say hello, and then we'll move on to our next interview at 6:30.
All right, sounds
Well,
good.
thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Hi. Oh, great to meet you. You look familiar. Oh, is that right? Okay.
So, I found cancer in my intestines, my small intestines. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
They gave it some long name that I can't even pronounce. But, so I go to a surgeon on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, up in Bingham's in Boston. And it looks like they're going to have to remove sections of the intestines.
That's what I was gonna ask.
My question to you is, and I'm going to ask them,
Yeah.
but Michelle asked me to ask you, can they just remove one section at a time?
I believe, they don't have to take the whole thing. Is that your question?
No. Well, I'm going to have to wear a bag for
Okay, you are?
6 months, they said.
Okay.
And, but it's like in 4 different parts of the intestines. And it's metastasized from the cancer I had before.
Yeah.
So they're concerned about it spreading. So they're going to go in and just take everything out. But do they take all 4 sections out at one time? Or is it,
Do all 4 sections have it?
yeah,
Oh, I'm not sure then.
okay,
I wouldn't know.
yeah.
So wait, is it all of your small intestines?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
Hi, yes, sir. Well, I realized that when I was in there, that we were not, did you go into closing it down? It's still live? Okay. Okay, why don't we make that motion?
Yeah.
Because we're gonna have 10 minutes or so. So, you have a motion on the floor?
I'll make a motion that we recess.
I'll sit down and second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'll step down and second that. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we're back from recess.
Back, and you have your second candidate, Joseph Lopes.
Hi, Joseph.
Hi.
How are you?
Good evening, good, how are you?
I'm doing great. I just pull this up. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you for the,
And you're one of three, so I hope you feel good about that.
I feel good. Thank you, sir.
Great. As I had said to the other applicant, that try not to be nervous. I know there's people here you're in an interview, and it's like, oh my gosh, how can you say don't be nervous? But if you need a question asked again, we'll just ask it, ask and we'll repeat it. Bernie is going to do the actual asking of the questions. If you feel like you're in the weeds and need a little assistance again, start over or whatever you want to do. But we've had your paperwork now for a little while, and I think we both know there is a third selectman who had to recuse himself. But we're very familiar with everything that you're about. So, Bernie, whenever you're ready, sir.
Absolutely, yeah, I should have mentioned, Joe, before we came in, that I'll be serving as a facilitator. The board members will have questions sort of built off of your responses to the questions that I raise. As the chair has noted, they've had an opportunity to review your cover letter, your resume, the report from the references checks that we did, and your writing sample. We gave you a paper to write, a memo to write regarding collaboration, which is important here in the town, and we're going to get to that a little bit later. But why don't we start with, sort of, I guess the question of who are you and why are you here? Meaning, without getting into extreme detail of your whole resume, what has brought you to the point that you've applied for the position of town administrator here in Dayton, and why do you think you'd be successful here?
So I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to present myself to you, to the both of you. I have 14 years of municipal experience, and I fell in love with politics at a young age. And I made sure that what I was trying to do would always get me to an opportunity where I would be able to be in front of a committee like yourself to be the town manager or the town administrator. Mm-hmm. I went to school for political science because that's where my passion has always been. I worked in the finance field as a means to get a greater understanding of the financial acumen that you need to be not just a city councilor as I am in New Bedford, but to be a town manager and worked with a select board that are making sure that they have the tools that they need to successfully do the job for the constituents. So I have spent the better part of my professional career always knowing that I wanted to be in this role and work within a community environment to provide the tools that the community needs and the select boards and the residents need.
Sure.
So that's where I get to. Politics is a passion. I know it sounds crazy to some people, not the two of you because you ran for office, but it's something that I've always loved and knew that I wanted to spend my life doing in my passion in my professional career.
Okay.
Okay. So why Dayton?
I live in New Bedford, about 25 minutes away, and I said if I never wanted to move away from where I called home the community that I love, and that's southeastern Massachusetts. So I've always been mindful of where I wanted to hang my hat, and this is an amazing town. I've known a handful of people that are graduated from Bristol Plymouth and that lived in Dayton, so it's an amazing town that has a characteristics that's it's New England. It has a unique characteristic behind it, and I would love to be able to provide my institutional knowledge that I've gained working in my city to the residents of Dayton.
Okay.
What's your, along those lines, and maybe you could just elaborate a little bit on it. We're asking all the candidates to sort of speak to this a little bit. It's like you have the benefit of having met people that have from Dayton, but how would you characterize Dayton? Well, you just did, as New England. But what's that mean to you, or what should it mean to the board when you say that?
So when you look at characteristics of the people that I know, they're all hard workers. They care about the community. They care about their families. They go to work for the betterment of their community, but also the betterment of their family, to provide for their family and to stay within the community that some people have grown up in, but others have moved to. So when you look at the people that I know that all live within the area, they all say that it's unique. It's a family, there's community, people know each other. And that's attractive. You don't see that everywhere you go. And I know as myself for running for office, you get to meet people and have relationships with people. But it's always been something that people have told me that live in and around Dayton, that there is a close connection between the community that I just think is an amazing piece. When you ask the question why, it's community. Community with people that want to be together, that people want to work collectively for the betterment of the town. That's something that, is near and dear to myself.
Okay. Bernie, if you don't mind. Sure. You mentioned politics. Do you feel the position of a town administrator is political?
No. You work for the select board, and you work for all of the department heads in the community. It's not a political position because it's not on the ballot. The three of yous, the two of yous, but the three of yous, you're on the ballot. You're the political piece associated with the town and running the town.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This came up, well, let me skip down. How would you, as the town administrator, you would be responsible for day-to-day operations here in the town, and play a primary role within the community as a whole. How would you describe your leadership style?
One of the things that I pride myself on is effective communication. Everybody needs to be on the same page. Everybody needs to know what's going on. Doesn't matter if it's the chairman of the board or the DPI director. Everybody needs to be on that same page and collectively working towards a common goal. So when you talk about the management style, it's a communication style. Knowing that the three of you need to be well versed on what's going on within all the departments in the city is important to myself. And if given the position, I would make sure that each one of you were made aware of everything that was going on. The last thing that anybody that wants in your shoes is to walk into a store and they see somebody and say, I didn't know we were doing X, Y, and Z at the DPI department. So making sure that you're all abreast to it. I know that as an elected official myself, the importance of communication between department heads and the municipality. So understanding how it is a communication-driven environment.
Sure.
In managing your staff, when we talk about your style with regards to staff, how does that work? How do you ensure that they're on the same page and working? And I would imagine you'd probably say communication again.
Communication,
But in terms of, so go on.
one of the things that was brought up yesterday when I had the pleasure of meeting everyone was some people need to be coached and some people need questions asked. So my management style has always been a pseudo hybrid of trying to coach people, but if somebody has a question, not just giving them the answer, but asking them questions so they can get to the answer themselves. That way they feel comfortable and empowered as well, that knowing that the job that they're doing, they're extremely capable of doing, and that they don't have to ask all the time, that they know that they have the ability and the knowledge to do it. So I've always prided myself on all the teams that I've managed to be a pseudo coach, but to also ask the important questions. If somebody lets me with a question, if I can come back to them with a question and they can get to the answer themselves, then they're empowered to do their job, and that's important.
How do you practice delegation?
I always look at it from a standpoint of how collectively do we work together. Delegating to people to have them do tasks is one thing, but to work with them on that task is what's important. In my last role as the executive director, we wrote countless RFPs. And the RFP process, for anybody that's written it, can be cumbersome and boring, but we collectively did it together. We were able to dissect all of the tools within the RFP process that had to be done, and we collectively dispersed assignments out to the team members that were best suited to address the portion of the question of the RFP, and then we collectively worked together to make sure that that final submission hit, you hope, dot all the I's and cross all the T's for submission. And I will say we were extremely lucky in my last position that for 95% of the grants that we applied for, we received. And the ones that we didn't, we were able to have the discussion with the agency that was that we submitted to, and asked them what we needed to do to correct. And we were able to make those corrections and resubmit for, a secondary review approval.
I'm going to come back to grants in a little bit, and I asked you at the very outset to sort of not go into great detail about because we've all seen your paperwork. But I did want to have an opportunity to, particularly for the viewing public and the people in attendance here, to talk a little bit about your last position, sort of what it was, what you did, and how, in the level of responsibility, and sort of the history of that brings us to how you got there and where you are today.
So I was hired to be the interim executive director of a workforce board. There was a gentleman that was at the time 68 or 70 that was looking at retiring. They had a candidate in mind to be the director, but the individual was missing a few key pieces that were needed to be a successful director. I knew the director from a previous life, and he asked me if I had any consideration of taking over in an interim role for him and working to mentor the candidate that they chose. At first I said no a couple times, and I finally made a decision, yes, that I would take over an interim role and be an interim executive director for a period of 3 years. It was a 3-year contract. It was extended to a little over 40 months. Because the individual that was chosen was still learning, and at her behest, she decided not to move forward with the position. She realized there was a lot more that was entailed into the job than what was originally thought when she was applying for it previously. At the conclusion of my contract, they posted the position out, and I had made a decision that I wasn't interested in staying there, because I wanted to work in the political field and be a town administrator or a town manager. And I knew if I was in that role, I wouldn't leave, because it would have been a 3-year contract, and I wouldn't want to leave somebody high and dry.
Sure.
So as a workforce, could you talk a little bit about the role of the Workforce Development Board?
So the Workforce Board in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is a federally mandated operation under the WIOA Act, Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. The governor can determine the number of workforce boards in the Commonwealth. They can consolidate or expand. Massachusetts has 16 of them. They oversee all the career centers and all of the programming for municipalities. I had 11 municipalities within the zone that I was responsible for, from Rochester, Wareham, Rochester, Marion, Mattapoisett, New Bedford, Freetown, down in Acushnet. We oversaw all of the associated funding, as well as sending out an RFP for the operator of the Career Center. The Career Center has a third-party operator, and we contracted out with a company that was based out of Louisville, Kentucky. The original provider was based out of Connecticut. There were some issues during their tenure. One of the roles that I was assigned with in my capacity was to send out an RFP for a new operator. We did. We went from the bottom third of operations to the top third of operations within 18 months of that new operator. So we chose the right operator, but we also put the right people in place to manage everything in that time period.
Okay.
We also grew our reserves. We had less than 45, 50 days of reserves, and when I left, we were 210 or 218 days in reserves.
Great.
And prior to that, you served in a number of, I think you noted, in finance. You served in capacities in different
Correct. Yes, sir.
banks, doing loan officer primarily, business development for.
So I started out at economic development, was offered a job as a business development officer, became a vice president of commercial lending, and then I became a lending consultant for a period of almost 8 years. And then I went back in traditional lending as a VP of commercial lending before I left to take over the workforce board.
Okay.
Great.
As I noted in our in our introduction tonight, but also in once you were selected as a finalist for this position, collaboration and communication, which you've spoken of, but communication, collaboration between departments, boards, committees is really considered to be crucial here in Dayton. The structure of government really necessitates it, and arguably that's the same in every community, but we asked you and the other finalists to prepare a written essay speaking to that issue, an example that you've had in the past of promoting collaboration to solve a problem. We've seen your written
Memo.
document, the memo that we asked you to do. Tonight, we'd like you to speak to it a little bit and talk about what you were able to achieve through collaboration and what lessons you may have learned from that.
It's really interesting. So prior to building the Public Safety Center, we built an elementary school. And when we were building the elementary school, we were...
Could I back you up?
Sure.
Again, for the board has an advantage here because they have all your documents, and I know they're the ones that we're most interested in getting the information to, but for the public as well, if you could explain what the project is and how you are tied to it.
Sure. So I was the city council president. I was also the city councilor for the ward where we were building the first new public safety center in 65 years. We were also building the first combined public safety center. But prior to that, we built an elementary school, also in my ward, and I was the city council president. I served as city council president 4 times, and during that tenure, as a city councilor and city council president, built 2 schools and a public safety center in my ward. We were building a school, we had erected all the steel, and there was a telephone pole in the middle of all the steel that we were erecting. Because Eversource continued to say they were gonna move the pole, they were gonna move the pole, they were gonna move the pole. So we were always working with the on-site project manager and Eversource to make sure that we were gonna get this pole removed. And to get to the point where we had to have a sit-down discussion with Eversource, the representative's boss from Eversource, as well as the on-site project manager and the construction company. Eversource agreed that it was their fault, that they never moved the pole when we were asked them considerable times, and they assumed the responsibility of bringing in a crane to basically pop it out of a 2.5-story building. So that collaboration where we were working with the on-site project manager, we hired that same on-site project manager by chance to build a public safety center. And as we were building the public safety center, we came up with, I believe it was 100 questions that we asked the police chief, the fire chief, and the EMS director in regards to they were gonna be housed in this facility. And one of the department heads basically went through the 100 questions, answered them all, and said, great. One of the department heads was a little behind on getting it. So while we were waiting for that information, we were continuously having discussions with everybody else that was gonna be using this public safety center. And from that point on, we were having a lot of one-on-one discussions, but we were also having collaborative discussions because we expanded the scope of it. When we brought police and fire into it, we also brought animal control. When we brought the fire department, we brought emergency services and emergency management all into the fold of this building. So what started out as we had assumed a public safety center became a true Encompass public safety center where we were always collectively trying to gather data to make sure that what we were building for the first time in 65 years would be the most state-of-the-art and up-to-date facility that would fit the needs of everyone, not just for the short term, but for the long term. Because when you're going to debt, as you all know, when you go into debt, you have to build past the useful life. So we were having all of those collaborations and discussions to make sure that we were keeping everybody on the same page and make sure that we were getting the information needed to give to the designer and the on-site project manager to make sure that the project moved forward from design to implementation. It was a process, but at the end of the day, we built it on time, under budget, went through COVID, and completed the project. And it's an amazing testament to people working together. It's a beautiful public safety center. The fire department wanted to incorporate some of the older mystique that's associated with a fire station. The police officers were making sure it was safe but public space. And then we met all the guidelines that the state and federal government required in regards to the facility and how it was constructed. It's an amazing building.
Nice. Very good. Thank you. Okay. let's talk about, what's your approach to, people think being a town administrator is easy. But the reality is, well, it's already been pointed out, every community, people have lots of opinions. There can be conflict. What's the manner in which you address conflicts that come up in your communities?
So one of the things, I walk in with, almost 14 years of being a city councilor and understanding that some people are having a bad day and they just want to vent. People want to be heard. So it doesn't matter if you're the town manager or a selectman, people want to vent to the person that they think was going to hear them out. Sometimes they're not looking for a solution, they're just looking for comfort. And there are other people that are looking for comfort. So it's being able to determine what somebody's looking for and how to continue that discussion. A lot of times it might just be, okay, well, you know what, Peter, I'm glad that you provided all that information to me. Let me look back and see what we can find out and then follow up with them and relay information to them. Or if they have a question that they're looking to give to Nicole or Peter or Mark, say, okay, let me take that information and relay it to the individual that they're looking to have that conversation with. So I understand that difficulty of having those difficult conversations with people because they're coming to you on either a bad day or on a bad opportunity where something's affecting them. So you got to be able to listen, keep the mouth shut, and make sure that you're able to take all that they want in and then provide them with a reasonable answer. And if you're not able to give them an answer, look for the information that they need and then provide it to them.
Okay, great. Okay, we're gonna move away from some of the soft skills stuff now and get more into the more technical nuts and bolts type of stuff. I had a conversation with a finance director today from another community and his comment to me was, everyone, to do the job of a town administrator, you really have to know the numbers. Within any organization, you have to know the numbers. So we're interested in hearing your experience with municipal finance, with budget preparation. We know that you were in banking, so we assume you must know numbers. But could you talk to us about your knowledge of municipal finance and what you've done with regards to development of a municipal budget?
So during my tenure, city council president 4 times, chairman of the finance committee at least 5 times, chairman of the budget committee 4 times, the audit committee 3 times. And all of those roles were working with the CFO and the administration to provide what is now over a $500 million budget for the city of New Bedford. We have a $251 million school budget and $248 million municipal budget. All of those finances come in front of the council. We're the entity that is responsible for making sure that the budget is balanced, that the budget is passed, and we work directly with the administration on the drafting of the budget. So between being the city council president 4 times and chairman of finance, budget committee, and the audit committee, I have had my hands in the municipal budget of a $500,000 entity from beginning to end. From the first meeting where we're getting what are the needs and wants of the department heads to how do we put together a CIP budget where we're looking at what are going to be the future needs that we can, look at debt servicing as we're retiring debt, taking on debt to handle, future needs of maintaining buildings, buying squad cars. I have been on the procurement of all of the purchases for fire engines and police cruisers in the city of New Bedford. So I have put my stamp on that side, as well as when we've built all of the facilities during my tenure, been part of the finance associated with the financing for them, either it be with the Massachusetts School Building Authority or with the municipality. And then as my tenure as a banker, I spent 7.5 years doing financial consulting for small businesses between 100,000 and 10 million of financial consulting, which allowed me to look into the finances of a business, what was working well and what wasn't working well. And sometimes business owners didn't see what wasn't working well because they were so far in the weeds that coming in and looking at, okay, what's the receivable, what's the turn date? All of those pieces would provide them with information that they would need to help turn around their business.
Do you, in your role as, so I assume in your role as a city council president, and as a city councilor, that you're well-versed, if you will, in, I mean, you actually haven't, because New Bedford, every city, every community is a little bit different in how this is done, but, so, you know, do you actually put pen to paper in drafting up that budget, or you rely upon the CFO to do that, but your knowledge of levy limits, Prop 2.5, which is part
So
of
we
levy
take in Proposition 2.5, all the levy limits, all of that. So what happens was the CFO works directly with the mayor and the city council president on putting that budget together. We start in January, and then we end by June 30th, and then we do tax reclassification between December 10th and December 20th to get it to DOR. And on the tax reclassification, as we were talking outside about, you know, there is a means of looking at it, especially New Bedford is a lot like Dayton in regards to we have a heavily residential population where we're heavily focused on residents paying the burden of the municipal finance. And I have always been under the mindset that you can't raise more revenue from the taxpayers than you need to operate the municipality. You have to be extremely mindful in looking at how do you take the tax levy and maximize what you need to minimize the impact on the residents, because they're the largest payer of the taxes. Dayton is, I think, almost 80% residential in regards to the payment of it, so you gotta be extremely mindful of that. I think the average tax rate in Dayton is $5,751, give or take the finances that I've been looking at.
It's big difference in budget. I mean, you're talking 300 million to 28 million. So, take away a few zeros, is that gonna be difficult for you to manage that kind of small budget compared to what you used to?
No, as I said to, somebody asked me that question yesterday, and I said, I've always explained to people that when you look at the numbers, you gotta compare it to your household minus the commas. We all have a household budget. We all have, what we have is our means coming in and the means going out. All you do is you have an extra comma for the most part, and you gotta be mindful of that when you're having that conversation with people. You tell people that the budget is X and they're not used to, 20, 30, $40 million, but they're used to what they have to run their household on. And if you just remove the comma, you can have a better conversation with people because they're more at ease.
I have another question, but I don't want to interrupt the flow of this particular topic, so I'm going to try to remember to bring that back later. That does relate to the size element, but, well, why don't I put it in now? It is, I think that's a great way of putting it about the commerce, and, it's all scale, but what's different is the resources that you have in a city. You have, in New Bedford, a chief procurement officer.
We do.
You have a director of procurement. You have an HR director. You have, a number of other positions that don't exist in a town like Dayton. Will that be an issue for you?
So I looked at your organizational chart in depth for my own edification. And I think when you're as nimble as you can be in operations, sometimes you run a better ship. So as the executive director of the workforce board, we had a $9.8 million budget. And when I initially inherited the company, we had, I want to say 61 employees. And we were able to reduce some of the size of that workforce. As I said yesterday, I looked at what the ARPA cliff was going to look like prior to it happening. So when I took over, we built a 3, 5, and an 8-year financial projection. And within that first 3-year financial projection, I knew the ARPA cliff was going to run out and that we needed to start making difficult decisions early, and we became a more nimble workforce board. And we operated better when we were less bloated. So sometimes having all the tools doesn't make the ship run any better when you have to be able to manage what you have.
Okay. You answered my question about fiscal planning with that response, so that's good. I assume, and I'm quite sure I know, that New Bedford does have they do a fiscal forecasting.
We do a fiscal forecasting, not as in-depth as I would like,
Okay.
me personally. So when I ran the workforce board, we did a 3-year, a 5-year, as I said, and an 8-year. We looked at all of the revenues that we had coming in through grant dollars, where those grant dollars were associated, operated within pseudo silos that we knew the apprentice was gonna fund the apprentice coordinator and the person that was gonna be working on the apprentice side. The youth was gonna fund out of the youth programs. We looked at it at a very holistic approach. The city, I always say, we don't do enough forecasting past 2 years.
Oh, okay. You
We
don't
don't.
do, you don't do
We
a
do a
5?
3-year forecast, but it's got so many question marks in it.
Okay.
That it's not, something that I would stake my hat on. The only future forecasting that I always look at and I focus on is the OPEB trust fund and the pension obligations that we have to deal with, because that's on a scale and we know what that scale is gonna look like.
Has New Bedford, have you been involved as chair of the Finance and Budget Committee, and has the council adopted financial policies?
We do. We adopted financial policies, and we've made amendments to those policies. Some of the amendments I filed through the ordinance that would look at things differently. So one of the things that we did that I recommended, that when we look at the overall budget, when we're going out to debt service, new construction, new buildings, that we build into within that, a component to handle maintenance of that facility once it gets past its normal short-term useful life. The first thing in a budget that gets cut a lot is the maintenance piece. So we built into that, how do we handle that? Additionally, we have a meals tax and a hotel tax. One of the things that I suggested was that we take part of that meals tax and hotel tax that we're collecting, and that we take out a defined percentage to handle all of the funds associated with the marketing and the promoting the city of New Bedford. Before that was coming out of general government unclassified. And one of the things that I made when CFO Ari Sky was there, that we looked at changing that and using a portion of the hotel tax and meals tax to fund that, because we shouldn't be paying to market the city and promoting the city based on the back of the taxpayers, when we had the residents that were coming into the hotel, and we utilized those funds differently.
Great. Let's talk about grant writing. You mentioned grant writing in your workforce development. What's been your experience with grant writing, grant administration, and have you had an opportunity outside of the workforce development world to do grant writing?
So most of my experience in grant writing has been working in the workforce board. I served on a handful of boards and commissions that we solicited funds from private agencies, where I was part of a team as well that worked on soliciting the grant. But when it came to monitoring the grant, that would all come down to my tenure during the workforce board, where most of our operation budget came from soliciting grant dollars through different agencies and state and federal partners. So if it was the Department of Apprenticeship Standards, DAS at the Commonwealth, we're the regional hub in New Bedford for Brockton, Taunton, Fall River, New Bedford, Cape and the Islands. We're the administrator for that entire grant for this part of the Commonwealth. So we applied for the grant, we administered the grant, and we managed the grant across almost 48 or 49 municipalities. I was the entity responsible for making sure that everything that was submitted to the DAS, Department of Apprenticeship Standards, met all the requirements within the grant, and we were able to check everything off on that, and so I was the grant administrator. All of our youth programming, youth-centric dollars that go in to manage all the youth programming, that was also my responsibility to oversee and manage all of the grant dollars associated with that, as well as we're the healthcare consortium hub for those same communities, Taunton, Bristol, Brockton, Wareham, Cape and the Islands. We're the administrator and the hub for all of those healthcare dollars that are coming in for healthcare training. So we were the administrating entity for it all.
Did you physically write the grants, or did you have a department that,
So we collectively worked on the grants together,
okay,
collectively, yep, as a team.
yep,
Pieces were dissected, and the individual that was best suited to handle that portion worked on that portion.
okay. And where did you get your list of grants that were available?
So a lot of those were having contacts with the state and looking at what the state was soliciting out for proposals.
Okay.
And we would submit accordingly from that point. The DAS apprenticeship grant, that was a brand-new grant 3 years ago that we sought to be the central hub for Bristol County. We applied for it and we were successful in it, in getting it. The healthcare consortium grant, same model. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts knew that there was going to be a shortage of CNAs, dietitians, and nursing assistants. And they had made a public notice that if any of the workforce boards in the Commonwealth wanted to be the central hub for it, for a region, that there was going to be a grant solicitation out. We went, actually it was a Zoom meeting, we participated on the Zoom call. I realized that we had the capabilities of managing and overseeing it for a central region of the Commonwealth, and we applied and were successful both on the initial application and on the renewal of the application.
Great.
You've talked about when we were talking about your collaboration, you used the example of the public safety building. What's been your, I think we've talked about your project management, and certainly the management you've done in the workforce development is a good example of that as well, albeit not capital. But what about procurement? Here in Dayton, it's the responsibility of the town administrator to be the chief procurement officer. What's your background with 30B, Chapter 149, MCPPO certification, et cetera?
So we were actually on a meeting last night, we were talking about something very similar. So the city has a procurement director. The city council as a body works directly with the procurement director for all of that. Understanding that within the town administrator, I would assume all those duties and responsibilities and get certified for the procurement. But we live and work within 30B in the city of New Bedford for most of the projects that we do. If it was soliciting for the internet service provider or different amenities that we're looking for in regards to buying vehicles, we have been able to successfully use 30B for our last trash hauling contract. We're doing it now where we're locking up a 3-year commitment with another entity to provide a service to the city of New Bedford, and we're utilizing a previously issued RFP that had a similar scope, and we're utilizing 30B to move forward without sending another RFP, because the provider that we're utilizing within the first RFP has the capabilities and abilities to perform both jobs.
You mentioned your background in economic development. That's the way that many, in addition to grant writing or grants that are available to assist a community, economic development is the way that communities sort of help close the gap of the service needs of the residents and available revenues that are out there. People like to see economic development, so we're interested in what your background is in economic development. People also don't necessarily like to see the results of that economic development, so there's always that challenge of how you do that. Can you give us your perspective on how you would balance that? So, background in economic development, and then how you would balance it with community character.
So I started in economic development, I don't want to say how many years ago, I'm going to age myself. I was responsible for a few silos in the city of New Bedford. Business retention and expansion strategy. The one thing that we looked at, it was easier to help a business grow and stay in New Bedford than recruit a new business to come to the city. So we established a full business retention and expansion strategy. Additionally, we looked at a vacant storefront, and we effectively worked to see all of the vacant storefronts that were in the city of New Bedford. We put together a database of property owners, landlords, and real estate agents that would be interested in working with people to rent any of the storefronts that we had. So we looked at all of the storefronts across the entire city. We broke it into segments and industries, or what we thought would be best fitted. And then the other piece that I was responsible for was the TIF portion of it. In the city of New Bedford, I have been on the TIF review / voting member 7 out of my 13 years as a city councilor. And I've made changes to how we grant TIFs in the city of New Bedford. So one of the changes that I made and implemented by working with the New Bedford Economic Development Council was that any TIF that we're providing to a business owner, the amount that we're giving up can't be greater than the amount that we're collecting over the length of the TIF. So make sure that the city's not giving up more than what it's getting. Even though we're getting development, we still have to worry about tax base coming in to offset all of the expenditures. Additionally, when we did that, we wanted to make sure that employers were providing livable wages to the individuals that we were hiring. So we worked into the TIF to work directly with the employers to make sure that they were providing for full-time employees, health insurance, or at meeting the minimum wage. But the biggest piece that has played dividends now moving forward is, because the City of Bedford does give out a considerable amount of TIFs on a yearly basis, is that the value of the TIF can't be greater than what we're giving away. So if we're giving an individual $810,000 in benefits over that life of the TIF, that we're gonna make sure that we're collecting an equal amount in tax revenue.
I don't know does Dayton use any tax increment financing, TIFs? No, okay. It's a pretty involved process.
It is a pretty involved profits, because there's TIFs, there's HDIPs, and there's STAs, and each one has a different mechanism which you can use. An STA is only good for 8 years or less, and the structure has to be structured in a defined manner in which the state agrees to. With a TIF, there's TIF zones, and the zone has a useful life. If the zone dies, then you have to go back to the state and ask for that zone to be brought back to life. The largest company in New Bedford that utilizes the TIFs is Titleist, a Kushner company. They have at least 8 different TIFs. Every time they build a facility or they put an addition on it, they qualify for a TIF. And then we have a lot of companies within the industrial park that we've built a very good BRE strategy. So we're trying to keep those companies within the business park, and they're all applying for TIFs. A lot of people are going to the STA now. An STA has a shorter duration in the structure, provides a greater benefit in the upfront to the business than a traditional TIF. Traditional TIF can be structured over 20 years or the useful life of what's left in the zone.
What about in terms of infrastructure for economic development? Do you have any background in that area? Water, wastewater?
Oh, okay.
streets?
So water, wastewater in the city of Bedford is a $735 million acquisition right now. We're working with the DPI director on a $235 million Clean Water Act right now for the city of Bedford. That's going to alleviate some of the water going into the CSO system. So we're putting together from the end of 140 on Route 6, an entire $235 million of infrastructure that's going to deviate water from going in to the CSO system, and we're going to be putting in culverts and water retention areas that'll feed as a desalinization before it gets into the dam and the pond. So yes, I had a meeting a couple days ago just looking at how we were going to structure and working with the EPA, and I have been at the table for the last 8 years in our discussion with the attorney that we have from DC in regards to all of our EPA-related mandates. The city of New Bedford has gone a long time without addressing some of the mandates, and we're now being brought to catch up.
Sure.
So we've been looking at all of the funds available, both at the state level and the federal level, and we're looking at one of the funds that's going to be hopefully going out for the Clean Water Act that will allow us to alleviate one of the dam issues that we're having in the city.
I want to make sure that if the board members have questions on these areas, but I want to get into personnel management, if we could, and your experience with hiring employees, motivating employees, holding them accountable, disciplining if needed, and what's your experience managing people?
So at different times of my professional career, I've managed small teams and large teams. Smallest being 5, largest being at the workforce board and managing a team of almost 60. We've brought that down. We've had to hire, lay off, and on the rare occasion, we've had to let a few people go. And the process of letting go of somebody is meticulous and detailed orientated, which most things are, but we've had to let go of we let go of a few team members for a handful of reasons. Can't go into them, But we provided individuals with EAP services to make sure that they were getting the services that they needed outside of the traditional work hours prior to doing anything. A lot comes down to making sure that that employee file has all of the information in there. If you're gonna let go of somebody, you wanna make sure that you're protecting, in this case, the town versus the agency from unwanted lawsuits.
What about collective bargaining? Have you had much experience with
So I have-
sitting at the table?
Sitting at the table on police, fire, and Unit C contracts. Never the educational ones at the schools for the teachers, the paraprofessionals, that's handled by the school committee. But I've been at the table for police, fire, and EMS, but the Unit C as well. And the CFO, myself, and the city solicitor, I've been part of that discussion on the last fire contract and the previous police contract, as well as the current EMS contract.
When you say you set in on them, what was exactly your role besides?
So as a city councilor, we provide insight and guidance into the manner in which it's being done. We have a discussion in regards to what the tax levy, the council is the final authority to approve all contracts.
Right.
So they would come down to us, so what we do is we provide insight and guidance during that process to both the administration, the solicitor, and the union that's in front of us at that time. And then we review all of the contracts and approve or deny them prior to them being implemented.
So you don't actually do any of the negotiating?
I have been at the table, but that is normally been handled by the city solicitors. Yes, sir.
Like most communities, municipal governments have they sort of an issue of citizen trust and the need for transparency and openness, and Dayton has made that certainly a priority. What would you be able to bring to the town to sort of help that process along?
I've lived my life by a rule that my father taught me when I was very young, and got to realize it when I was 16 years old. Honesty is the greatest policy. And it sounds corny and it sounds cliche. You always remember the truth because the truth stays the same. If I lie to somebody, I have to remember a lie. And I'm not going to lie about it. I have to write everything down. I don't have the capabilities to remember a lie. I have to write everything down as I go throughout the day. Being able to have a conversation with somebody and being able to provide them with an honest answer. They might not like the answer, but honesty is always going to be the best policy. Because at the end of the day, they can't say that the individual wasn't upfront and direct with them. They provided them the truth. Even if they didn't like the answer, you got the truth. So for me, it's always been a direct and honest approach.
How do you increase the level of information that's going out to people? Because it isn't always necessarily, that's a great approach that you've described, but it isn't always necessarily just the
Right.
honesty part of it. It's the fact that if people need information, how do you make sure that they get information?
So one of the tools that I used as the workforce board was I had a board of 47 individuals. They got a monthly report, a quarterly assessment, and a biannual operations review of how the workforce board was operating. So the board knew everything that was going on at all times. We shared a lot of that information on social media platforms to make sure that the communities that we were working with knew what was going on. In a city, we have a lot of information that we put on cable access. We utilize our cable access for everything to make sure that the residents know what's going on. As an individual, I've used social media myself to make sure people know what's going on in the ward that I represent. But previously, as the workforce board director, I provided an executive summary and a full report to my board that I directly worked for. So they knew what was going on at all times at the workforce board. When we were seeking funds and grant dollars, they were made well aware. If we weren't going to seek a grant dollar, I let them know why we weren't seeking it and the justification for the reason why. I never wanted anybody to be in the dark because I wanted them to see as much light as I saw.
That may tie in with what my next topic will be, but one more question on this. How would you go about, how do you think you would go about becoming more immersed in the community of Dayton and build relationships with the residents?
So building relationships with residents, some of those that you gain is just by seeing them where they are. Coffee shops, restaurants, you name it, having an open door policy. I can tell you as a city councilor, I have an open door policy and I have office hours where people can come in and see me. If they have questions, concerns, it's not just an email or a phone call or a text message. A lot of times people want to have a sit-down conversation with you. And I always tell people, and I've done this during my tenure, City Hall closes at 4:30 in New Bedford. But I make sure that I'm there at extended hours so people can come and see me. If they have a question about an issue that's going on. And additionally, I have a monthly meeting outside of the community, third Wednesday of every month, 7 o'clock, Buttonwood Warming Center. You can come in, everything's on the table. You can ask any question you want. And within that, there are times that I'll say, I'm gonna bring in the DPI commissioner, I'm gonna bring in the police chief, I'm gonna bring in the fire chief, so people can have those discussions, not just with myself, but if there's an issue going on, we're doing a water quality project, we brought in DPI and the water commission, the commission that's responsible for wastewater. So the residents could ask them the questions. Sometimes they're the expert, not myself, and it's always best to allow the experts to answer the questions, but I would facilitate the meetings.
Okay. Last question for me, and you may have already answered it, but how would you define a successful relationship between yourself and the board? That's perhaps the most important relationship that an administrator has.
Communication, having constant dialogue. I don't want to bombard you with information, but I also want to keep you abreast of everything that's going on within the town. As a fellow elected official, I know how important communication is. It's the lifeblood of what we do.
Sure.
You don't want to see a constituent at the grocery store, getting gas and ask you a question that you can't answer because you don't know what's going on. So understanding the importance of that and communicating that with you on a regular and consistent basis is extremely important. The better we build trust, the better we can collectively work together. But that goes with me making sure that you get all the information that you need within a timely manner.
What do you consider your relationship with the selectmen to be
And as the town manager,
as the town managers?
I work for the selectmen.
Okay.
Oversee all the departments that are within the town, but I work for the selectmen.
Yep. Do you believe in following the chain of command?
Yes, sir.
And about an open door policy, how do you rule, so to speak? Is you available operating hours to talk to a resident who has a concern or wants to voice their opinion, or do you believe in following with appointments and you're the last step on the complaint or whatever?
Yeah. So I believe in an open door policy. I think it's important that people know they can have time. Life doesn't always make it convenient for somebody to make an appointment. That doesn't mean, every 10 seconds, somebody's coming in the office because you still have a job to do. But you have to be mindful that people need to speak to you when they have concerns and obligations. You're working for the betterment of the community. So making sure that that door is always open for them, as much as it's open for you as well, but make sure that door is open for them to have that honest communication is important. And sometimes it might be, okay, well, that's a great question, let me follow up, and it might be following up with one of you with a more detailed answer that I can get back to that constituent with. But yes, an open door policy.
Sure. And what's your work ethics like? I mean, obviously you're going to be honest and things like that, but is it, look, I put in 12 hours a day, or I manage my time, I'm there 8 hours a day? Obviously, if there's an issue or a selectmen's meeting, you're going to be there that night. What do you feel is a balance that you like to strike?
I haven't struck a balance really well yet in my life, to
didn't
be
think
honest
so.
with you. So I had my left hip replaced on January 24th or 27th. I was back in my office a week later. You're not supposed to be back in the office a week later after having hip surgery. But I thought it was important that I was back in the office. I've always been a driven person. And I think being in the office and working directly with people and they can see your commitment is important. Sometimes seeing somebody else's commitment to a job and to a task motivates other people to have that same commitment. So yes, I'm a little driven.
Sure. It sounds like it. Do
A little bit.
Do you prefer to delegate the things that come in, or is it something that, look, I'm just going to take care of it because I can do it easier and faster, and,
I think it's a case-by-case basis. If you see that the people you're working with have a lot on their plate and you have a little more freedom and a little more availability to do something, take care of it yourself. Why delegate something to somebody else when they have enough on their plate, but you have a little more freedom or opportunity? One of the things that I did a lot of as the workforce board is I would have conversations with my team members on a regular basis. We had weekly staff meetings, and I was gauging everyone's temperature on a regular basis to see what I could take off their plates at time, but what I could put on their plates as well. And I got all of my team members the 60-second manager, even for those that weren't managers. I wanted them to have an understanding of the importance of that book and how that's important to how we collectively all work together. Just because you take a task off your plate and put it on somebody else's plate doesn't mean that that task has been resolved of.
Sure.
But everybody got the 60-second manager, and I think you've read it because you just looked at it. So, yes.
can you talk to me about developing your staff, so to speak, the department heads and their subordinates? What's your approach?
So I have always built relationships from everyone within the group. My grandfather retired and became a custodian. And all his friends asked him why he became a custodian when he retired. And I was in elementary school, a long time ago. And I remember one of the judges in the courts asked him a question. And he said, you know, Joe, why are you a custodian? You know, you retired. And he's like, well, I don't want to stay home and do nothing. But I saw how that judge interacted with him. That judge interacted with him the same way he would interact with a bailiff or somebody else. And I was a very young kid, and that has set a mindful approach to me, the importance of working collectively with everyone. No one's better than anybody else. Everyone's going to work to do their job, whatever his or her job is. And for me, I was always mindful that I can't do my job without everybody else that's working with me.
Sure.
I never say for me, working with me.
Yeah.
Because when that becomes you overstepping them and you think you're greater than them, you have turnover. And that's never what anybody wants. I'm lucky that at the workforce board, the only people that we let go were people that we needed to transition out. We didn't have good team members transition out on their own. As I said to somebody yesterday when they asked a question, people leave good employers for bad bosses. They don't leave good employers if they're happy at work and they love their boss. Sure. And that's a mindset that I've always kept front and center in how I operate.
Okay. I do have a few more questions, but I got to ask Nicole, do you have anything?
My only thing is, one of the references had mentioned this, in regards that it would be a change for you coming over to a small town, and you did touch on that in regards to the financial aspect, but coming over and having a small town mindset, how will you do that?
I think, in all honesty, I bet you I know who said it too. I can almost guarantee it. I have worked on the financial side of the banking side where it's a $100,000 transaction or an $18 million transaction. If I'm financing a small not-for-profit, or if I'm financing somebody that's building a brand new aquatic center, everyone gets the same attention. It doesn't matter if it's an $18 million facility or a $100,000 facility. I was always grateful that I kept 98, almost 99% of my customers in the banking world. Excuse me. And it didn't matter the size of the customer. So the size of the budget is relevant to the municipality and the services that you're offering.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I know we got to spend some time walking with our residents here, so I won't take up any more of your time. Are you
Sure.
all set, Bernie?
Yep. If you have another
No, I'm
question.
comfortable. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, good.
Sir, it's been a pleasure.
Please call me Joe, honestly.
Joe, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time, and good luck with.
Thank you.
I think the residents might have a few questions for you.
I'd like to motion that we recess.
I'm going to step down and second that. Any
Um,
discussion?
no.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
recess.
Step down and second that. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All set, Brendan? What's? Dalton. I was gonna call him Brendan. So how are you, sir?
Very good.
Good. I can tell you, like I told everybody else, don't be nervous, but that's not gonna stop you from being nervous, so, maybe you're
Right,
relaxed.
it's part of the job.
Yeah,
It's
I
being-
guess so.
Right, being a little nervous in this, but
But
thank you, I
I'm relaxed,
appreciate that.
so that's all that matters. Anyway, we have a series of questions that Mr. Lynch is going to ask you, and take your time responding to them. You're our last candidate, so we have about 12 minutes.
Okay.
And if you feel like you need a question repeated, by all means, he'll repeat it.
Yeah.
Or if you feel like you're straying off course, we can bring you.
Put me back on
put-
track,
Put
good.
you back on track.
I won't be insulted, so
Oh,
so
okay,
there you
good.
go.
So, Mr. Lynch, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Ralph, thanks for joining us, and thank you for coming out yesterday as well. You and the other candidates were great about coming out and meeting with the department heads. The board has your cover letter, your resume, the report from the references that we spoke to, that provides them some feedback of how people have interacted with you in prior positions. And they also have your writing sample that we'll get to a little bit later. So they have a good sense of your background, though, and what you've done. So I don't want to belabor that too much, but maybe if you could just talk a little bit about how you get to this point of being interested in being a town administrator. How has your career path worked to get you to that point? And why Dayton? And why do you think you'd be successful here?
Yeah. Bernie, thank you very much, and again, thank you to the board of Dayton. I want to start off, as you saw my resume, it's kind of taken different turns. I grew up in the Bronx, New York, very blue-collar family. And when you grow up in a blue-collar family, what's the job you're supposed to have? You're supposed to, get a municipal job. So what I did is I became a New York City police officer. I was successful at that. Unfortunately, I was injured, and I had to move on. So I had to do a career pivot, and that's why I went to Parade magazine. So in Parade magazine, with sort of every career that I've had, it helped me build blocks to really bring me in front of you today. At a patrol level, you learn relationship building. At Parade magazine, I was in charge of a $75 million budget of paper purchasing. I had to do negotiations. We were under time constraints, as you could imagine. It's a weekly paper, so you have those deadlines to meet. We decided we've always vacationed in Massachusetts on Cape Cod. So about 20-ish years ago, we decided as a family to move to Cape Cod. At that point, I became a member, an employee of a local bank. I started off as a consumer service rep, but I really used the skills I had that I had started developing and growing, from relationship building to analytical skills that I had in my previous careers. And I worked my way up to be a vice president in the bank. I was a vice president. I was handling commercial loans, residential loans, and business development. While I was working for the bank, I was also a member of the planning board for the town of Sandwich, and a select member for the town of Sandwich. And, being in that world, I saw that there were needs that had to be met by the town in terms of banking needs. So I took that skill set and I brought it, forward, and I quickly developed the bank's sort of government side. At the time, Cooperative Bank of Cape Cod had $700 million in assets, and I quickly calculated it out, and I was responsible for 5% of those assets. So I was very proud of the work I did there. But it was a small bank, and opportunities were few, and I stayed in touch with the town manager of the town of Sandwich, and we were at lunch, and he said to me, we're looking for a planner, more lamenting than asking, or maybe he was quietly asking. We just want someone who's smart, who knows the town. So, I went home, had a little discussion with my wife. On Monday, you know, I gave him a call and said, listen, should I put in my resume? He goes, why not? You know, at the time, Sandwich is a very good place to work, but for some reason, we just couldn't hold on to planners. We had like 4 planners in 7 years. I've been a planner now for 7 years. But, you know, the skill sets that can translate from the town of Sandwich to what I do there, to what I can do for the town of Dayton, is I developed MCPPO, and usually planners don't do that. So I kind of looked at, you know, what skills can I develop. I'm also a municipal hearing officer, you know, something else that the town of Dayton is looking for. But I wanted to grow my skill sets, and in addition to that, I also have a certificate from MMA for municipal finance, and you know, on the outside, just as continuous learning, I'm a graduate of the FBI Citizens Academy, and currently I'm enrolled in Cornell University's certificate program for public sector leadership. So I think with all those skill sets, I mean, I've had a lot of other successes in town. Hopefully I get an opportunity to talk to you about it and how it, you know, and how I believe it relates to the town of Dayton. But I don't want to be too loquacious. I know I know my writing sample is only supposed to be 500 words. I can't believe I went over that. Sister, my 4th grade teacher, Sister Amard, would be proud of me, but let's, we can move on.
All right, great. So you also have a master's degree in public administration.
Yes.
And I'm curious as to, because you got that when you were working at the bank. Why did you?
I started my Master's of Public Administration when I was in the police department. So,
okay.
One of the top MPA schools in the country is John Jay University, and which has a specialty for criminal justice and sort of public administrator leadership for policing. I had a fair amount of credits, and when I came up here, I was in, I said I want to complete that. So Suffolk University had a satellite program in Cape Cod Community College. I had to talk with them. They offered me scholarship money, and so I decided to complete my MPA. It was kind of funny when I did that. You know, my kids couldn't understand it. I would put them to bed, and I said, "Daddy has homework." You know, at the time they were little. They said, "You're old. Why do you have homework?" I said, "Well, because I do." Yeah. But a lot of the and the bank was very gracious as well. I have received some money from them, because there's a lot of crossover when you take a master's program, in human resources and planning and analytics. It's not just crunching numbers and understanding how policy works.
Okay. Before we go on too far, Bernie, can you go back to the first question, which was?
Which I didn't answer, is why do I want to be in Dayton?
Correct.
Okay.
What brings you here?
Yeah, Peter. I'm at the point in my career where I've developed these skill sets, and I want to use them to be a town administrator. And when you look across the horizon of southeastern Massachusetts, what towns would fit the bill that I think I could be successful in, and I saw Dayton came up. Why do I like Dayton? It's a small community. It's a rural community. It has a budget that I believe I could manage, and it also has challenges, right? Challenges which I've participated in. You're looking at a new fire station. It's something I did in my role as both as a selectman and a planning board member. You're looking at debt exclusions. Again, something that I've done. The Main Street project. I work closely with the engineering department. So there's and when I look at it, and there's also a few opportunities here in Dayton that may be missing, because of, maybe because of turnover, but, if you look at, you need your housing production plan. That's something every community needs, and it sort of helps you. It helps the town guard against, as I like to say, unscrupulous developers. Good developers like to know towns that have housing production plans, because, if they want to move into a community, then, then they know what the community wants. Open space, I know you have an open space committee, but when you have a certified open space plan, it opens up opportunities for grant money. The other thing is a master plan. I just completed the town's, we call it, on the Cape, it's called the Local Comprehensive Plan, but it's a master plan. And, what is the purpose of that? So, one, it helps get all the department heads together, sort of rowing in the same direction, understanding what the goals and action items are. But I think more importantly for the town of Dayton is that it gives the select board and the administrative staff the opportunity to go out and really talk with the people of Dayton to understand what they want, what they want to move the town forward. When I was doing the LCP for Sandwich, any project, there's three things that you need, right? You need time, you need money, and you need the will of the public. So, I jokingly say, money's the easiest. And, you say, why do you say that? There are ways to finance, you find grants and this and that. Time's hard, because time moves, right? But the first two are easy when you have the will of the public, because the will of the public will help you get the financing, and the will of the public will be tolerant of time and understand how it moves. If you don't have the will of the public, then you have nothing, because then you're forcing stuff on people, and it becomes extremely difficult.
Thank you.
Yeah. So and again, and I see that, and I see Dayton. I've watched a couple of in preparation for this. I watched the Selectmen meetings, and
I'm sorry.
no, listen, it's okay, So it's I put it on 1.5 speed, and I get through it. But the very good thing about it is, the people of this community care about this community, and that's something that I want to be a part of. And when I look at at Dayton, I said, I can help you lead the town.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great segue. Talk to us about your leadership style as it relates to the organization. How would this organization function under your leadership style? And how would you see yourself as what's your style of leading within the community?
Yeah. I think internally, definitely, you have to be a collaborative leader. You have to rely on the strengths of the department heads and the people who work for you. And I'm just going to tell a quick story. I'm not going to go off track, Bernie. Don't worry about me. So I learned this very, very early in my career, and I've carried this with me for a long time. When I was in the police department, I had the opportunity to work for the police commissioner of the city of New York in the Office of Management, Analysis, and Planning. And, I was just a cop. And the person in charge of the unit was an inspector. And if right, in hierarchical societies, in organizations, like inspectors up here, a cop is down there. You don't talk to them, you don't look at them, you don't do any of that stuff. But he was this great guy, and he recognized that the people who worked for him had certain expertises, which he didn't have. He called me to his office once. He had a plan. We're going over it. And he goes, Ralph, yes, no, you don't have to say yes. And I found that the most empowering thing. This guy was a well-respected inspector in the city of New York. And he was asking me. I had the power to tell him, no, that was a bad idea. And I've carried that with me, my entire life. I used that every opportunity I had. When I worked for the bank, I had several direct reports. I did my best to, you know, to manage them up, to make sure they get the education and the skill sets they need. I have that now with, as the Director of Planning and Economic Development. You know, the people I have under me who report to me, you know, I make sure that they have the skills, the education, and training that they need. Because when they have that, when they're empowered, they make my job easy. They make my life easy. So I'm a little selfish, yes. But you know, the reason for that is, you know, you want to be a collaborative leader and a democratic leader. You want to be able to listen to ideas, because that, you know, that makes, that gives a better solution to any problem you have. You know, out in the community, you know, I was, you know, I sat in your seat, you know, but even before that, it's about relationship building. It's about going out there and listening to the people, and, you know, what they want, you know, what are their concerns, you know, what are they happy about, you know, what are they not happy about, and you want to be able to sort of listen, bring that in. How do you fit that into policy? How's that, you know, you're right, so you're the chief policy makers for the town, you know, so we would have to work collaboratively to sort of make sure that we put forward good policy that, you know, that the people of the town of Dayton want. So it's, you know, I learned early on in my life that relationship building is everything. You know, again, you know, whether it's getting information, you know, as a police officer, or making a sale, or really adjusting zoning for, so, you know, so people's lives are better.
You mentioned in the first part of your response to this topic about collaboration within the organization, and as you know, for your assignment, we asked you to draft up a memo that detailed out for the board to sort of get your an example of your use of collaboration, because that's important here in the town of Dayton, and also obviously to test your writing skills.
Right.
And I hope you told your children that you were doing your homework for this assignment. But if you could, we want to sort of give you an opportunity to talk about that a little bit. What was the example of collaboration that you presented to the board, to us, and detail it out for us, how it was collaborated, and why it was successful?
Yeah, thank you. Well, the example I used was the wing school, and I have to be honest with you, I'm very proud of the results of the wing school. It started, the town of Sandwich had a declining student population, and as a result of that, pretty much the first school that was built in the town of Sandwich, the first K through 12 school, the school district decided to decommission. So we had this large building, like 40,000 square foot building, pretty much in the middle of town. What do we do with it? So, you know, when I was a selectman, we had a lot of public outreach. But when I had the opportunity to become the director of planning and economic development, I said, you know, I talked to the town manager. I said, listen, we have to take this. You know, they said, what do we do with it? I said, we have to take this to the next step. Usually, you know, that responsibility will fall on the town manager or the assistant town manager. But, you know, I was sort of eager to use the skill sets that I had learned in the private sector. Let me see if I could move this forward. So, you know, first things first, from the you know, what we learned from public outreach is, you know, people wanted to see housing, or they wanted to see or you know, it was too big for a museum, but housing, museum, or artist. So we went forward and changed the zoning, and we did a zoning overlay. So I had to make a presentation. I had to make a presentation to town meeting, and, you know, go on public access TV and just sort of explain the process. So very successful. We got that passed, zoning, 2/3 majority. It was an overwhelming majority. It may have been unanimous. That was the easy part. The next part is, how do you sell this behemoth of a building? So, so what I had done is sort of, for some reason, we hadn't been too successful in the past doing RFPs for the town of Sandwich, and I think they sort of went the more traditional municipal routes. I had a conversation with the assistant town manager at the time, and they said, "Oh, we just put it in the Boston Globe and Cape Cod Times." I said, "This is a building. I mean, we should have a better outreach program." So I called around. I started calling around to see who sold school buildings. Who had that experience in the past. And I had a great conversation with a fellow planner in the town of Groton, Connecticut, and they had sold, so he gave me some ideas. So I used those ideas. So I laid out a marketing scheme, and as a result of that marketing scheme, we got two very good RFPs back. And the successful RFP was for a 40B project for affordable housing. Now the collaboration really starts because, you hear a 40B project, people start getting nervous. So, start doing the public outreach. What kind of project is this going to be? How's it going to affect the Wing School? This was a beloved school. I mean, they had, while I was going through the records to set it up, people used to send out postcards of their school. I mean, who does that? That's crazy. So what we did was we had to put a restriction on the older portion of the school to make sure people were happy with what was going to happen with the school. And then, as 40Bs go, it did outreach and we were successful. Work with the developer, collaborate with the developer, but as there are other departments that you have to bring in so that you make sure it all works together. I had to bring in historic, I had to bring in the engineering department, I had to bring in the fire department, just to make sure that everything that was being proposed, fits in with the town of Sandwich. So, it was a long process. It started in 2020, and we finally closed conveyed the property to the developers this past June. But we didn't even get to I haven't even explained we got to the comprehensive permit part. So again, more public outreach, and I was really happy when it went to the comprehensive permit. The public came, no one spoke out against the project. Everybody from the public spoke in favor of the project because they were informed. I made sure that they were informed, that they knew what was going on. There was nothing to be afraid of. Then the next step is the financing of the project. So it is a $52 million project. So I worked with the developer. They asked us, to help them out, to provide letters of support, to reach out. So they received low-income housing tax credits for it. They just received that in November. So then we go on, and then even the closing of it. So the closing of it, I had to include get in touch with the town council, with the banks, and work with engineering. Some of the simple things that you don't think about. What is the new address? What's the new address going to be? So we had to work and develop a new address, and we had to go through the A&R process to subdivide out the land. And even to this day, actually, yesterday I was again working with the developer because I get so many calls in my office. So many people are happy about this project. They want to be involved in it. They want to rent a unit in there. So again, worked with the developer. I said, listen, you have to have a web page. You have to have something where people can go to so they could get more information on. Boom, they set up a web page. I've been the point person giving it out to people, and Just like 2 days ago, this woman calls me up. Oh, I went on the web. I haven't heard anything yet. So I said, okay, and that's what I want to know. That's what I want to hear. I want, I've got an open door policy, with the people, of the town of Sandwich. They know they could reach out to me. And so what I did is I reached out to the developer. I said, listen, we're not getting, people are starting to complain they're not getting any responses. He was on it. He was, he reached out to the management company, and he goes, okay, we're going to have responses for everybody. If you put it in, you're going to get a response in 48 hours. And I think, I think, if I could go back to how I deal with the public, I have that open door policy. People, people in the town knew me. They knew me as their local banker. They knew me as their selectman, and now they know me as their town planner. And they knew, I've developed a reputation, of integrity, and people could call me, and I will always give you an answer. I may not give you an answer right away, but I'll be honest. I'll say, listen, I don't know. I will call you back in like 48 hours to either tell you what the answer is or to tell you I'm going to need some more time. And that woman, oops, I'm sorry. And the woman who called me up, I said, I didn't have an answer for her. I said, call me Friday. So I'm expecting to speak to her in like 2 days to tell her the result of what we did.
Okay. Ralph, we're gonna move on to the next question.
Sure.
Let's talk about your experience with budgeting.
Yeah.
Can you explain your understanding municipal finance and preparation of a town budget?
Yeah, as I stated, I have my certificate in municipal finance from MMA, but also I have an understanding of the budget. I participated in the budget as a selectman, 6 years as a selectman, and then also I have a departmental budget, which flows into the larger budget. But we're, the good thing about the way we do it in Sandwiches, and I hope to incorporate that in Dayton, is that, each department gets to know what the whole budget is. We get to know, what it is. We get to know if there's a shortfall, if there's a plus, what we expect free cash is, what's going into OPEB, what's going into the rainy day fund. I have a very good understanding of that, and also I have, a financial acumen, based on my work at the bank, and also being in charge of a $75 million budget when I was at Parade Magazine. It wasn't exactly a municipal budget, but there were expectations on that budget, and they had if I didn't meet certain numbers, there were serious tax implications that that the company faced. So much so at one point, I had developed a spreadsheet, an inventory spreadsheet, which correlated with the budget to make sure that we met our year-end numbers.
What was your budget in Sandwich?
Our budget, the town's budget, $105 million.
Do you know what Dayton is?
27?
Yeah,
Yeah.
almost 28.
Yeah.
Big difference.
A big difference.
Okay.
A big difference. And that's and honestly, that's one of the things I looked at. I think it's a number that I could be comfortable with, but it's a number. It has challenges. The town of Dayton, as you well know, has some challenges. How do we meet that number? One of the big challenges you have is you had an expectation for your regional school district, right? It was about normally $850,000. All of a sudden, you get a bill for like $1.2 million. Right. So again, understanding the budget also, I'm going to go back again to relationship building, having a relationship building with the superintendent, sort of get a jump on it. What is that going to be? What's the number going to be? Don't spring it on us in like January, March. Let me know what's happening so you could project and you could plan.
Okay. So but you feel comfortable with the basics of a municipal budget in terms of compliance with Proposition 2.5, understanding how free cash is generated
Yep.
and,
Oh, and the surety, oh, yeah, you know, absolutely,
Okay,
you know.
and the-
And,
and the budget calendar in terms of,
yeah,
Okay.
no, you know, absolutely. So, you know, so there's a basic rhythm, a basic rhythm to, you know, to the budget and leading up to it. And I tell you, I'm really happy to see that the town of Dayton really codified like a financial team, you know, with the town administrator, the accountant, and the treasurer, the town clerk. I mean, it's really good to see that, you know, that team is in place. But yeah, no, understand free cash. And the responsibilities of the budget. Listen, I know how to read a cherry sheet and, you know, what's coming in and, you know, revenues and expenditures. So I've been there.
you know, the use of, do you have a philosophy or you know, opinion on the use of fiscal forecasting to multi-year fiscal forecasting?
Yeah. Oh no, that's I think that's a very good practice to get into. You know, because when I was looking, it's good to have a 5-year plan. So you have to look at, you know, for fiscal forecasting, you know, what's the 5-year plan? What's a big part of that 5-year plan? You know, what do you want to put in? What do you want your reserves to be? What do you want to put into OPEB? You know, what are your capital expenses going to be? You know, that's really important to have your 5-year plan on that. In addition to that, it's good to have a long-range plan, a 5-year long-range plan. And it's good to write that down. And it's good, you know, in the town of Sandwich, we have that in the annual warrant. And what it does, it sort of sets up expectations, you know, the selectmen development and coordination with the town manager. But it's good to know what's coming up. And you know, being a planner, right? You want to make sure you plan for those events. You know, it's also good. You know, you have the town clerk. Why do you have the town clerk involved in these things? So, you know, sometimes population means a lot. What is the population going to be? You know, you have an aging population. You have a declining student enrollment population. You know. You have to look at the ambulance fund. You have to look at, you know, what, you know, you make some projections on what your contributions to the school committee, to the school district will be. So, you know, and, you know, then you kind of look at, you know, what, you know, make forecasting. You have to forecast and you have to look across the landscape of the employees of the town of Dayton, you know. Where are you at? What's the average age of the employees? Are you going to get, you know, are you going to have a lot of retirements in the next 5 years? Or do you have to bring on new people? So all that contributes to budget forecasting.
Okay, great, thank you. Grant writing, what's been your experience with grant writing?
Yeah, I've had some successful writing grants, administering grants. The biggest grant that I had done was really early in the career, Mass Works grant in association with the 40B project. It was $1.5 million, and that was for roadway improvements. You know, outside of that, I've written grants. You know, a lot of grants I've written in my role as the director of planning was to get, you know, funding to do the housing production plan, do the local comprehensive plan. And you know, and we talk about grants of $100,000, $50,000, you know, in that area. So you know, you have to look, you have to see, you know, what's available out there.
How do you find out what's available?
You know something?
I stole your question.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Yeah, that's good. Well, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is a great resource, and you know how I would find out about the things I don't know. I have a good network of individuals that you know that I can rely on. obviously, I have a good relationship with the town manager of Sandwich. I have a good relationship with Rockland and Middleborough, and I could lean on those individuals, whenever I need to say, hey, listen, do you know of any grant opportunities that I don't know about?
Sure, okay, good.
A quick question about grants. Did you write those personally? The ones that you said that?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh,
That's-
yeah,
that's all.
yeah, and I don't want to make it seem like so special, but sometimes those grants are, they ask you.
Sure.
Do A, B, C, D. So, if you follow it, a lot of times, if you hit the criteria, especially, they want you to take advantage of the grants. So, there was someone at Mass Works, she had moved on, but, you develop that relationship, I had another grant, I was trying to do a grant for the wing school, but the thing is, we couldn't, because it was a private entity, the town couldn't do it. So I put the developer in touch with the individual at MassWorks, and I didn't write the grant, but they got the grant. But I knew where to go and who to put people in touch with, and how to move that forward.
I think your example of collaboration was, gave us a sense of your experience with project management. And you are MCPPO?
That is
You
correct.
have-
Yep.
you have retained that?
MCPPO, and twice now. So I re-upped. So as of January 2024. So I have another 3 years on that. So
Great.
if I don't forget.
One of our other questions, and your background is such that I think we probably have a pretty good sense. It will correct that one of my questions here was about economic development grants, including MassWorks. So you've already sort of addressed that for us. Have you been successful in Sandwich of bringing new businesses in, and how do you balance that with the other part of development is the community character aspect of how do you get the right developments? How have you been able to do that in Sandwich?
Yeah, I have, when I was a business development officer for the bank, I was a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and I maintained that relationship with the Chamber of Commerce. So a lot of times, Sandwich had had a reputation of being business unfriendly. So I went out to the chamber to make sure people understood that the permitting process was not hard. Case in point, COVID, took a toll on a lot of restaurants. But when the state allowed us to expand outside dining, I was part of the team, because there was some zoning issues to expand outside seating. Most places lost restaurants during COVID. We were out there. We were trying to be positive, and we were up plus two restaurants. One of the big things that we brought in was Treehouse Brewery. So. That's a big economic driver in the town of Sandwich. They were looking for a place. They wanted like a beach restaurant, and there was one available, and we worked with them. We worked with zoning to develop parking, and it's a very popular place. But we have to balance, right? It's in a beach community, so we make sure we balance, the crowds that come to Treehouse Parking with the people who live there year round. So we developed a good balance. We have a relationship, with the managers at Treehouse. If it gets a little too crowded, we, make sure people move it along. We developed a shuttle bus. We told them that they had developed a shuttle bus, so it doesn't, adversely impact the people who live there.
Okay, great. Moving on to another matter, another topic, if you will, that's part of this nuts and bolts of town administration, personnel management. And I was very pleased to hear you talk about succession planning,
Yes.
is thinking that through in the budgeting process. And you've indicated that you've managed a number of direct reports when you were at the bank, and you have a number of direct reports now. So, you've had the opportunity to hire
Yes.
people and discipline people?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah,
You don't have to give us names.
no. It was, more, I'm very fortunate where I have 3 direct reports in the town of Sandwich, and I hired 2 of them. So, if I had disciplined, that's on me. But and the third person was there. She was there for a short time. So, and when I got the job, they are excellent. They are excellent workers. At the bank, sometimes we had quotas that we had to meet. So as a manager, I never waited for someone's annual review to drop the hammer. That's unfair. It's unfair to that individual. As you go along, you watch people. You know if they're struggling. You know if they need help. You want to give people the opportunity to reach their goals and reach their full potential in the job. And then, if the time comes where they're not, and you bring them in to have a conversation, it's not a surprise, and they may come to the realization that maybe this job was not for them. And it was kind of funny. I had to fire one person, and the funny thing about it is that nobody wanted to write the memo. This guy wasn't he wasn't my direct report, but they gave me the information. I wrote a memo to him, and they said, "Okay, now Ralph, you have to fire this person." I said, "What?" I said, "Okay," So it was hard, but he understood, what was coming, and it's a difficult conversation, and you have to be forward and upfront and honest with people, and you got to be honest with people in the bad and the good. You want to be honest with people. Say, listen, you have potential. If you do X, we could get you to the next step. Are you willing to do that? So you have to be able to recognize that as well. It's, and you have to be able to say, all right, maybe you're not there yet, but why don't you try Y? So that is the hardest part of any job, is managing people, because it's managing right expectations, managing relationships.
Okay. Have you had any experience with collective bargaining?
Very limited, and the only real experience I had was at the very later stage of my job, my role in the police department. I was a union rep, and so I was at the initial stages of actually being at the table. I understand collective bargaining. And just general negotiations in general, because I had to negotiate paper pricing, right? So, the things, the important thing about any negotiation is, right, you have to listen, and you have to be open, and, both sides have to be, trusting that you're there for the same reason, but, and everybody has to understand what the ground rules are. And if somebody breaks those ground rules, you don't walk away from the negotiation. You take a breath and you reset, and then you start from the beginning.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about sort of coming back to some of the relationship stuff again. The town of Dighton, like every community, is dealing with the issue of how to get information out to their residents, how to build public trust, how to ensure that people, feel that they are dealing with a government that is interested in what they, is happening in the community. You've given us some good examples of how you brought people into the process with the Wing School. but I'm interested in how you would build your relationships with the citizens. You know, you'd be the person coming in, and there'd be all these people here in Dayton. How would the people of Dayton get to know Ralph Fataka?
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously the first, you know, usually what do you do the first 100 days, right? You go out into the community and you go out to, you know, where people are. You know, I would even, you know, propose, you know, the good thing is, you know, where you know, town hall is closed on Fridays, but, you know, maybe set up a coffee somewhere, and I'd be happy, you know, to come in and avail myself, you know, because you're kind of free of, right, the constraints of being in the office on a Friday. So it'd be good to, you know, like to sit down and just be available for people to come in and to talk to you. And then we had this one great idea. Somebody brought it up when we were going through our LCP process, and they said, and we're kind of in the work now in instituting in Sandwich is like, you know, have an ambassador program. And, you know, what does that mean? You know, I know there's about 5 people who come to every it seems that about 5 people come to every selectmen's meeting. So use those, you know, use those people to, you know, to be the ambassadors, you know, not to like, you know, plug a program or anything, but hey, listen, this is happening on such and such a date. You know, all you have to do is tell 5 people and commit those ambassadors to tell, another 5 people, because you know there's nothing more discouraging in municipal government when if you have a town, right, you have a town meeting, or you go through, you get your presentation ready, and you're doing it, and 10 people show up. You know, you're expecting a lot more, but why don't they show up? It's maybe they don't know about it. You know, maybe the time is wrong, and it's good to have that ambassador program in place to sort of start tweaking that. If I could go back to the LCP local comprehensive plan, the process to get that done, we did a public outreach, we did online surveys, and then because it was right after COVID, October 21, we started doing public outreach. And to make sure we got as many people as we could, we held meetings on Wednesday night and Saturday mornings. So we had 5 categories. We had 2 meetings for each category. So I wanted to make sure this, it's an important plan. People really should contribute to it. So I wanted to make sure that if you wanted to be face to face, I would give everybody as much opportunity as they can. Whether they're working, come on Saturday, childcare issues, or whatever. So I wanted to make it as open and as transparent as possible.
Okay. Last question from me. You've been a selectman, and now you're looking to be a town administrator. How would you describe the relationship that you will have with the Board of Selectmen here in Dayton if you were appointed town administrator? What would that relationship look like?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the administrator and myself as an administrator would carry out the policies and objectives set by the select board. You as elected officials, you're out there. You hear what the people want. You bring it back. You bring it back to the professional staff. How do we create a policy that makes this happen? I mean, my town manager, calls the selectmen. They're his bosses, and that's how I would look at it the same way, because that's, no one, you don't get elected to the job of town administrator, right? You get selected, but you have to be out there in the community. You're the ones who go in the grocery store. You drop your kids off at school. And you hear it, and as a result, you have to, take that back and let's work together. Let's, make sure we have, policy that works, a budget that works, anything, that you're looking to do that works to help advance Dayton.
Great. I think that's all I have for
Okay.
questions for you.
Do you have anything, Nicole?
No, I don't.
You mentioned an open door policy, and are you the type of manager that when somebody comes in and wants to see you, you drop what you're doing to talk to them? If it be a resident or somebody from the town, staff?
I'm going to say, for the most part, it depends what I'm doing.
Okay.
And I have that situation now, and someone comes in, and I'll say, listen, and you have to be respectful and let people know, I have this going on right now. Can we set an appointment? I'd be happy to talk to you, and we could set an appointment. So that works. That I never had that not work.
Yep.
So it's kind of funny. Sometimes when a lot of times where I have, if I'm at the desk in Sandwich, like 3 people come in at once. Nobody has an appointment, and I'll say, okay, obviously this is what's going on. Can we set for another day? How complicated? I like to ask this. How complicated is your question? Oh, not complicated. And when they said, I said, that's complicated. I said, and I can't give you an answer, a complete and full answer. If you got to give me some background information first.
Sure.
So it's not right. So it's fair to you, and it's fair, and it's
We
fair to
have
me.
an experienced department heads, and we have some that aren't so experienced. It's a lot of different personalities.
Yeah.
And you also have 3 selectmen members who have different personalities.
Yeah.
They're not going to always agree, you're not going to always agree with them. How do you go about developing your relationship with those department heads? And how do you go about dealing with the 3 selectmen who have 3 different opinions? 2 questions there.
Right, yeah. That's probably the most difficult question of the night, because it's just, I find relationship building intuitive. Just having, as you can well imagine, I've dealt with very difficult people in the careers I've had, but something, the real basis of it is listening. Listening to someone's concerns and where are they coming from, and what that personality is. I can tell you this. We had I have an actual example. I'm on the Glasstown Cultural District in the town of Sandwich, and I'm like the municipal rep. And the person, the chair of it wants to do this project, light trees up, and I'm saying, okay, that's a great idea, but this costs money. I said, what's the plan? And she came to my office like intent that I was looking to squash this plan. And then it kind of went like this. She goes, I love the project, I love the project, I love the project. And I was saying, well, you got to give me a plan, you got to give me a plan, you got to give me a plan. What she was hearing, and I had to realize that, she was saying that I don't love the project. And I had to take a step back. And then, you kind of learn this, right? You learn this in investigation school, and you learn it in sales school, and you learn it like once you start, you have to start mirroring the person to start understanding their perspective. And once I said, hold on a second. I said, I love the project. I said, I love it, and to make sure it continues, we need to get a plan in place. So when we're asked by the selectmen, why are you spending this amount of money to do this? You could spell it out to them. And then, but when you spell it out to them, because what's going to happen, the selectmen are going to go out and they say, why are you spending money putting lights in trees? And they could say, well, this is the plan. And once she realized that, you know, we were on the same page, you know, that I loved it, I changed my vocabulary so she could hear me. And once that happened, you know, within 3 days, I got a plan. We moved forward. We got lights in the trees. So, I mean, that's how you do it.
All right, thank you. Excellent job. Thank you for coming in this evening.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you have any questions for us?
Just two questions. They may or may not. They may or may not
Yeah.
be quick. Where do you see Dayton in the next 5 years? You know, how do the selectmen see it and the townsfolk see it?
Sure.
And is it parallel?
I don't know if it's parallel. The logistic-wise, we have about 400 Form A lots left. So it's going to be limited to how many more residents we can grow to.
Right. Can I just are those connected to the sewer or the Title V lots? Do you know? Okay.
Variety.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know. Most of them are probably not connected to
Okay.
the sewer and the
Yeah.
water.
Yeah.
My guess would be that. So we're going to max out. What that number's going to be, 9, 10,000 tops,
Yeah.
I don't even see it getting that high. As far as business coming into town, again, we're limited, space-wise, as well as it's a transit. Dayton is a pass-through. We're not a destination for a lot of people.
Right.
So as far as growth, residential and business will be slow. Financially, we have, as you mentioned, the debt exclusion coming up this weekend, as well as the November election. And that will determine pretty much how we're going to be financially for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't pass, there will be
A little bit of
cuts.
pain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit of pain.
Yeah,
And if it
yeah.
does pass, there'll
Yeah.
be pain
Yeah.
with people paying out of their pockets.
Yeah, yeah.
So as far as anything else, I see our school system is getting better.
Yeah.
It already is. The department heads are strong. There's a couple of new ones that are still a little weak, but they're coming along. It would be your job as a town administrator to help develop those with your day-to-day activities. So it's a community that it's going to be a bedroom community of, like it is, it's a suburb of Boston right now.
Right, yeah.
One time it was Quincy, then it became Braintree, and now it's Dayton and Rehoboth
Yeah.
and Seekonk and
Yeah.
Berkeley. And I see that continuing.
Okay. And then, and just quickly, you spoke to it, you know, the professionalism of the staff. Can you talk a little bit, you know, and you know, that's what I've seen. I was very impressed with our conversation yesterday.
Good.
But what is the, is that, how would you define the culture here in Dayton?
The department heads, as far as department heads go, they are all very passionate, and as well as the employees that work with the department heads. So sticking with that for a second before we get into the residents, they work very hard. Some of them are exceptional.
Yeah.
They each have weaknesses, like we all do.
Right.
And whether it be budgeting or management style or whatever, but they've all made leaps and bounds over the years that they've been here. And you have a lot of employees that have been here for a long time. So it goes to show you that it's to some, it's just not a career
Right.
or a job. It's a career.
Right.
Yeah. As far as the residents go, very passionate as well. They have opinions. They like those opinions to be heard, and they like to get results from their questions. Not so much just questions, but if they have concerns, they want them addressed.
Right. Okay. Good. And, you know, just, I think that's for, it for questions, but I just want to point out, and I hope in our conversations that it came across that, you know, I do believe I have the skills and the temperament and the experience, you know, to help this board lead Dayton.
I think you can.
Thank you.
Okay. I think a couple of our residents might have a couple of questions for you, And thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Lynch, do you have anything else? at
No,
this
I was just
stage?
gonna say, thank you, Ralph, and if people have any questions on the way out, you can mingle a bit and.
Okay.
go from there.
So I'll get up. And
Mark, we have to continue with our meeting.
Do you have more business?
just have
a couple
warrants.
things.
My last point then is.
Sure.
For any of you, on the board that want to talk before your
Yeah.
meeting on Monday, just feel free to email me or give me a call and, we'll set
Sure.
up a time and we'll talk about the candidates or.
Absolutely.
anything, all right?
Thank you,
All right, thank you.
appreciate it.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Great job, Peter.
Thank you. Mark, we have the approval of the warrants next, please.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the warrants paid through August 29, 2024, 9A-25, in the amount of $139,668.46, and 9B-25, in the amount of $155,077.18. Warrants paid by September 5th, 24, 10A-25, in the amount of $118,015.10, 10B-25, in the amount of $302,489.90. And warrants paid by September 12th, 24, 11A-25, in the amount of $119,021.48. And lastly, 11B-25, in the amount of $182,278.29.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Public input, any more? Anybody out there that, on
Hey,
Zoom
Rafa.
that wants to be heard? Okay, hearing none. Minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the Board of Selectmen regular meeting minutes of August 21st, 2024.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second. Oh, I'm sorry, Mark. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.